OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
And you're very welcome along to this morning's OTB AM. It's Jerry Gilroy and Tommy Rooney with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. It's 30 years since Cork won the double. We're going to talk with Larry Tompkins and Fitzgerald a little bit later on. We've got part two of our Brogan interview where he talks in depth about his relationship with Jim Gavin and the end of his Dublin career and just how difficult it was for him to get any playing time at the end of that. And we're obviously talking about the main story today, which is the death at the age of 43 of the legend that is Pat Smullen. We're going to speak with Johnny Ward and Johnny Murtagh. Obviously, Pat Smullen leaves an incredible legacy and a young family behind, and the racing community today is coming together in grief. So we'll talk about that at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, Wes Brown was on the football show last night. He sat down with David Myler to have a long, in-depth conversation about their time together at Sunderland, but also obviously his heyday at Manchester United. So sit back, relax and enjoy some talk about Alex Ferguson and Roy Keane.
You're obviously playing in this Manchester United team. I can't not bring him up because he was my favourite footballer when I grew up. And obviously I know a little tale, but Roy Keane, how big was he, as captain of Manchester United for you as a player, a teammate, someone who sorts out your contracts, which we can get into?
Yeah. He's the man, mate. He was the man. He was a born winner, I would say. Obviously I've got there. He's already been there for many, many years. He's now the captain. And he's got expectations and he wants the best out of everyone. And, at the time, Man United were, winning quite a lot. And, he's now got the armband. He has to keep that going. And it doesn't matter whether you was, you just got bought to the club or you was a young lad. The expectation is, first of all, you've got to work hard and do the basics in a football game. And, that's what Roy Keane does. Yes, we know these other attributes you've got, but, he focuses on the basics as well. So listen, I understand it completely. If I'm not running and he thinks I can run harder, he will tell me, but these games when, people always take not the bad things, but the snaps that Roy Keane does. But, so many times he would compliment you at half-time walking off, keep on going, brilliant, son. Little things like this that obviously people don't talk as much about, but he was fantastic, and he was a role model. That's how he probably would have took that, especially looking at Brian Robson when he was coming through. This never say die attitude, and he expected it from everyone, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. No,
I fully agree with you. But obviously there's the famous story that obviously your contract was up for negotiation. And I believe Roy Keane and was it Gary Neville have gone in for contract talks on behalf of Wes Brown.
That's true, yeah. Did you know what? This was early on in my career, though. This was probably my second contract. Obviously, I signed when I was 17, and it was the one after that, so it was like 20. Probably just after the treble season. And I remember just going up, and I said, listen, I'm going to have a word with Gaz. I had a word with Gaz, and he said, listen, I want Keno to look at it. And yeah, Keno was brilliant. And, for that one, sorted everything out. Fantastic. Listen, don't get me wrong. I didn't go up to him every day keep saying, Keno, what's happening?
It wasn't as if training had finished, like, and you're walking in going, Roy, have you, been up to see the manager there about my contract or whatever? But that just shows you the type of person he is, that a lot of people are quick to, pull on the negativity stuff or whatever, or the negative stuff, should I say. But, for him to, put his arm around you and say, look, I'll help you out. Because he thought highly of you at that stage, to then go in on behalf of you, to represent you, to get you the best deal that you could get.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. And obviously I didn't know how he would take it, but when I look back now, I'm only just asking for his help, and he was brilliant with it, along with Gaz. But yeah, he said, yeah, don't worry, we'll have a look at it and get it sorted for you, because, it needs to be right. And that's the other side of Keno that people don't see. I probably wouldn't have gone up to Keno at the beginning. I went up to Gaz because I'm just not sure. But he was absolutely fantastic.
No, you're right. So we need to get into this, Wes. 5 Premier League titles.
Should
2
be 8.
champions. Should be 8.
Not played enough games. I played 9 one season and needed one more.
Oh, wow. Should be 8, though. So, obviously, you just highlighted you didn't play enough games in one season. What are the other 2?
Oh, the same. I think I played 4, which I'm not that one, but there was one where I played 8 or 9 games. I scored one as well. But the rule changed, by the way, Milo. How many do you have to play?
No, technically the rule is 5 games. I think when you would have started out...
Another 2, mate, if that's the case. But yeah, officially it's 5, mate. Officially it's 5.
Well, if you go back to when you started out, I believe, somebody would obviously correct me, but I believe it was 13 games, and then it got changed to 10, and now it's at 5.
Yeah.
So you say there, there's 2 seasons that you don't have enough games. What's the third one?
Same thing. No, same thing, mate. There's just not enough.
The same.
I played in the season, but just not played enough.
Okay.
Listen, 5's good enough. I'll take 5, mate.
5 is incredible. Do you know?
Yeah, but I was there for the ones. Don't worry. Just I just didn't play enough, and that was the rules at the time. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. Well, if you look at Liverpool and Man City, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but like Liverpool have waited 30 years for the Premier League title. Like Man City have won a couple over the last few years, but like you've got 5, and of course you have 2 Champions Leagues. You're one of 3 players to play in both. Like,
yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, listen, my first full season was a treble. Now that's the standard in my head that I'm thinking has to keep going every year, year in, year out, and that it was such a high standard that even when we used to finish second, Milo, we were devastated. If we got beat in a cup final, we'd be devastated. If we lost one league game, if we were doing really well, and we were still like sort of in first, pretty much fine. We're devastated. It's just the high standards that the manager wanted and the players wanted as well.
Oh well, look, Manchester United is renowned for winning the Premier League title. Anywhere second down is unacceptable. Like you said, you should have had 8 Premier League titles. Like Giggsy, of course, is 13.
Yeah.
Do you think over the time the club, well, it hasn't. Would you say it's been a bit of a failure in the Champions League?
Not really. I mean, listen, when you get to finals, which we did do quite often when I was still there, we got to 3 other finals. Obviously, the one in Moscow, one in Rome, and one at Wembley.
Yeah.
Now, when we get in the final there, it's hard. I mean, you beat Barcelona in 08 semi-final.
Yeah.
But you can see that they've already got this unbelievable team. The couple of years after the add-ons that they bring, and then, like we said, we get them in the final both years, and we just didn't have enough. It's horrible because you've not won it again. You're the second best team in Europe, but that's not good enough. Do you know what I mean? But we had the squad there to do it. I mean, if you look at our squad, it was phenomenal, the players that we had. But we just couldn't quite get past that team. That probably will be, as time goes on, will be said to be one of the best teams ever produced, that Barcelona team. And, we were just a touch behind them, which is a shame, because to get to that many finals in so many years is an achievement in itself.
Yeah, because you're looking at, what was it, 08, 2010 and 12, was it? To win one, as you said, you beat Barcelona in the semi-final.
Yeah.
And then that team comes through, those players grow and build and get better. And then, look, they dominated world football for the next 3 years. You even look at Spain winning the Euros in 2008, the World Cup, and then the Euros again.
Yeah.
The big thing is always, which we'll get into, is there's always this debate of which is the best Premier League team. Now, this Liverpool team, obviously, were so dominant last year. But first and foremost, I'll start with you. The 99 treble-winning team, or the 2008, double winning team?
See, if you ask the younger generation, they'll always go 08. But believe me, to win that treble, it's different material. It's different league to actually do it. it's nearly been done by a few clubs, but you just can't quite get there. In 08, we got beat in a semi-final. Semi-final against Portsmouth. Now, we battered Portsmouth, and we should have won the game, but we didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And listen, there's all sort of things that come into that. A bit of luck, a bit of, I don't know, maybe something from the referee. You get a decision that wasn't yours or whatever. But, for the 99, especially back then in the league, you still had 5 subs. Champions League, you had 7. The strikers, I look at the 4 strikers we had, the midfield, the defence. You can't beat it. I mean, I was there, I remember it. It's very hard for me to go anywhere else. You know what I mean? And I had this discussion once before, and we put all the unbelievable teams in, like the Vincent Bulls, Mourinho's, I think the first one. Obviously, Liverpool weren't there yet because
Man City.
That was
the Man
last
City team.
The Man City team, and you know what? There was a player from every club, and they all said the 99 treble season, because on paper it's I'm not saying it's easy, but it's there, it's doable. But obviously, being involved and looking at it, I mean, it's going to be hard to repeat. I'm not going to lie, and I know other teams do it in other leagues, but we're talking about the Premier League.
No, it's definitely there's a reason why it's only been done once.
Yeah,
you look at Man City have dominated the Premier League until obviously Liverpool, but they've never been successful in Europe. Then you look at Liverpool, who've always done well in Champions League. Or albeit you can say last year they were unlucky to lose, the Premier League title by a point, but they still haven't won the FA Cup. And it's always a big thing, and I kind of agree with you that the younger generation who remembered the 08 team, but like the 99 team, as you said, the 4 strikers of Cole, Sheringham, York, who am I missing? Solskjær. Then you have the midfield of Keane, Scholes and Butt. You've got Giggs, Beckham, Blomqvist. There's just, and then you go into the back 4. It's just such an incredible team. And I think people are drawn to 08, for the Tevez, Rooney, and of course Ronaldo. Yeah, it's a big toss-up, but you're one of, like I said, 3 people. There's you, Giggsy and Scholes have played all the way through, and I would value your opinion more. Like, of course, if you ask Rooney, he'll probably say 08, or if you ask Nicky Butt, he'll say 99, because they were those teams, but you played in both.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm telling the truth, and obviously I didn't play in the 99 final, I was sub, but being there, I remember how stressing it was, even once we win that semi-final, which was again one of the best games I've ever watched against Arsenal, when Giggsy scores that famous goal. It was probably the most nerve-wracking thing that I've ever watched. But then once it happens, and listen, in that final, you can ask anyone, we could have been 2-0 down easily. And if they hit the post, it comes back into Schmeichel's hand, crossbar. And then, something special happens at the end. And that feeling I've never felt ever again, Milo. Ever. Don't matter what I've won. It's just not the same. And I'm gutted because I got that too early.
I know. The bar was set so high with a treble-winning season.
Yeah, so high. But like I said, for anyone to even speak about teams like that, they all have to have won the same things, and at the moment, that's not happened.
No, definitely. Now, I touched on Solskjær, who's obviously a striker in 99, scores, famous goal. He's obviously the Manchester United manager now. I know you'll be still wrapped up in it all, and you'll still be keeping close contact and what have you. How do you think he's gotten on, in his time as Manchester United manager?
Yeah, well, I think it's all it's to see, really. I mean, he started off very well. And then it was a big dip, wasn't there? Big dip where, we just couldn't get any wins. The players didn't look as fit as maybe they should have been. And then we started last season. And at the beginning you're thinking, are we going to get in top 4? And you know what? Not many people would have said, I think they're not going to do it. So And again, there was games last season where you can see that you need players, I think. But listen, he will know that a few players stepped up as well. You know, he's brought some young lads in, obviously Mason and Brandon. But, you know, you could still say you needed players. And then obviously you get Bruno in. You know, just before we brought Bruno in, there was a little dip. We'd win a game, then we'd lose or we'd draw. And, you know, and you can see this, you know, the aim was to get into top four. You know, it was Leicester's aim, it was Chelsea's aim, obviously Arsenal's aim, Tottenham's as well. And Sheffield United were there for, you know, a good period of time as well, just, you know, battling it out. But, you know, he got the lads going and eventually we got there. I think once he brought Bruno, I don't think anyone expected the impact he would bring to the team, if I'm being quite honest. And I mean, all around the Premier League, he just sort of lifted everyone. And eventually we got into that top four. But I think, you know, the signings he has done, I think they've been good. I don't think you can really question them. You know, Dan James, I didn't think Dan James would play as much at all anyway. You know, coming from Swansea. Maguire would play, Wan-Bissaka would play. And there's been times, you know, when they have made mistakes. And I always say to people, you know, should they be making mistakes? Well, yeah, everyone makes a mistake. You don't want to be known as a player or a team that keep making mistakes, but it's going to happen at some point. But ultimately, they've been pretty solid. You know, I think the partnership and the defence, they've got on well. The front three have been firing. I think the problem is when one of them's not in. You know, Martial, Rashford, Mason. I think when one's taken out, the system has to change a little bit. And I think that's where we've probably not got the personnel to sort of fill it in. But, you know, we've brought Donny now and we'll see where he fits in. But hopefully we get some more signings because we need a bigger squad.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to touch on your player of the season for Man United last year was in fact Tony Martial.
Yeah.
Do you think he can hit the heights again and almost not regain his form, but keep that level of consistency going? You know, because look, we've seen glimpses over the last few years. If you look back to his debut against Liverpool, when he carved Skirtle inside out, that I think that's what Manchester United fans are desperate for, him to hit that consistency on a regular basis. Do you think he can do it?
I don't know. I hope so. Because that's the big question now. Listen, if I would have thought if Rashford wouldn't have got injured, I think I said Rashford probably might have got it for me because near the end he was up there. But, you know, Martial, he stepped up a level. You know, he stepped up to that level everyone's seen glimpses of every now and again. And he was doing it every game. He's smiling. He's getting at play. You could see defenders being a bit wary now because of dropping off when he's running at them. But he's putting the ball in the back of the net. Big difference from probably a year ago. And he's doing it with consistency.
Do you think that, like, look, we all knew that Bruno Fernandes was a good player. You know, if anyone had watched any, you know, Europa League or international football, you'd have seen that. But him signing in January transformed that club in the sense that when he came in, he just elevated everyone, that they went on levels and he took on kind of a hidden role as a leader. You know, I think he's one of those that demands like top level, but he's the one who's setting the bar himself. And do you think his impact from January onwards was huge?
100%, mate. It was weird because obviously we knew that he was a good player. But there's a lot of good players that come Man United and they don't, you know, give you that top level for a good few months, you know, just the impact of, you know, really big club, the expectation. And then this guy just comes in and goes, his focus, it was unbelievable. All right, you know what, it's like he was saying to himself, this game I'm going to do this one on my own because just to let everyone know that they need to be on this level. You know, he was doing really good things. And I think the other players I've looked at it, and you know what it's like. If you play with good players, you play better. I don't care. If you play with good players, the best will come out of you. I know players that have been on, you know, not so good teams, and I'm thinking, and I know he's better than this, but, you know, mentally he's gone a little bit and he needs a bit of help just to lift him up. His confidence has gone. But, you know, when someone comes in and brings this confidence, And then you're like saying to yourself, okay, I like this. This is good. This is going well. Let's get on his page. You know, you would have seen it before though, but it does happen.
Yeah, no, 100%.
He's sort of done that for Man United.
It's definitely when they come in and they start training, they're training so well. You're kind of like, okay, now I understand why the club, you know, we're desperate to sign this fella.
Yeah.
But while I'm talking about signing, do you think Manchester United will sign Jadon Sancho?
I hope so. I like him. And yeah, they probably are arguing over money. You know, whether it's with a situation that's happening all over the world or something else, it probably will be that. But I just think the way Ollie's going with his signings, the young players he's bringing in, he fits in nice. He fits in perfect. You know, we have got 3 players that, you know, we had at the end of the season, with young Greenwood being one of them. But to bring him in as well, I think you're now looking at 4 players there where you can say, you know, any 3 of them could play at any point. You could probably move a couple into a different area. But I just think the 3, they would be, he's a young player, he's talented, he's got pace, he can score, assist. And he's a player that opponents would be scared of. And that's what you need in your team, in your squad.
Yeah, but it's also like Mason Greenwood, phenomenal player, you know, phenomenal young player, I should say, really. But it's almost if they were to bring him in, they could like use Greenwood the right way rather than just throwing him in at the deep end and saying, away you go, and just play, you know, obviously 38 games and, you know, whatever comes, and just rather than like burning him out too early, kind of filter him in so that he then establishes himself. By the time he hits 21, he's like 100 games under his belt and he's ready to go.
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, when he first come in, Mason, you know, he wasn't in quite a lot. He'd play, he'd come on for a bit and then go off. He would never started, always come on maybe a bit longer. But the problem was he kept scoring. You know, he kept scoring when he was, which is good. Yeah. But and then eventually, I think it got to the point where you sort of have to play him because we know we still needed to win games. But he's such a young lad that you are right. I think it's, you know, at the beginning, the way Ollie was doing it, I think was perfect. And you know, you don't want to tire him out. You don't want to, you know, especially early on in the season, drain him and put, you know, and put pressure on him in that way. You just want to bring him on. I don't know, 1-0, 2-0 up, 3-0 up, you know, let him do his thing. But like he has been doing. But yeah, I mean, to get that sort of third, I'm going to call them 3 strikers, the third, an extra striker on to help them 3, is something that I think Ollie knows he needs.
Now, we've got to talk about, you know, Liverpool, Man City, who've been dominating, you know, well, Liverpool last year, Man City for the few years before that. Obviously, you're grow up a Manchester United fan. You're a Manchester United legend. You've won so much of them. How do you feel seeing those 2 clubs at the top end of English football and not seeing your beloved United?
Yeah, it's different for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're talking about, well, we'll start with the City team first. I mean, you're talking about a fantastic team with quality. You know, and yes, they started from scratch and sort of and build the way up. But I mean, any footballer would understand that you see a good team when you see one. And first of all, the City team was that, and you know, deserved everything that they got. Really, I mean, they dominated for a good 3-4 years. You know, great players, and then obviously they did swap managers here and there, and then Pep came in, and we all knew what Pep was like from being at obviously Barca, Bayern Munich. We knew what he would sort of bring to that City team, change him again the way they play and sort of playing that sort of Barcelona style. And then the Liverpool team. Listen, as soon as I know you buy Van Dijk and Mane, I'm thinking, oh my God, do you know what I mean? Because they are quality players, and I think Liverpool have always missed that centre half. You know, that dominant centre half that, you know, it will only take a month or 2 for other teams to understand that this is not going to be an easy game. And I think, obviously, he's brought that. But Klopp's been fantastic with his signings. I mean, Robertson, Arnold, you know, 2 players that play really high up, but obviously contribute to a lot of the goals that Liverpool score. And then you've got the front 3. Firmino, who for me does a fantastic job. in his position. You know, you can half say he's not bothered about the limelight. He will just play his role perfectly and let Salah and Mane, you know, do the individual stuff. And he's got a fantastic team there. Obviously, Jordan Henderson, you know, young lad that come from Sunderland, your mate. He's gone to. He's obviously gone there. He's worked hard. He's committed. Got the captaincy, you know, and been absolutely brilliant. So listen. I will never hammer a good team because I've been in many. You know, I've been in probably 3 different squads that have won stuff, and I can see that, you know, them 2 teams that you just mentioned are definitely up there because not just by quality but mental strength and the way they go about the games.
And to finish, Wes,
why did you laugh? Why did you laugh when I said Jordan?
My mate, because everyone just says that to me. Goes, "Oh, he's your mate." No.
Yeah, but he's your mate, though, isn't it? So what's the matter?
There's no problem. It's just I wasn't expecting you to go, "Your mate."
Yeah. Sorry, man.
It's like when I say Shazy, I'll say, "Oh, it's Wes's mate."
Exactly. I wouldn't be bothered.
Yeah, no, I just didn't expect you to say it. But Wes, to wrap up, who's winning the Premier League?
Oh, even being honest, it's got to be between Liverpool and City. For the simple fact that, you know, Liverpool will want to retain a title. You know, not a lot of signing being done from Klopp. Not, you know, but I still feel like, even after watching that first game at the weekend, you know, tough game against Leeds. I thought Leeds were really good as well, by the way. But, you know, sometimes you can see the quality come out. And yes, they let 3 in. But when you've got players like that up front who can score goals, especially the way Salah can, they're always going to be in the hunt. And obviously that they will want to retain the title as well. I think Chelsea have spent a lot of money. A lot of money, and I'm expecting them to be brilliant, and I just don't know if that's going to work as well as, you know, as they think it is, because the expectation for them now is massive. I mean, they've spent to actually win the Premier League, and I don't know if that, you know, if they've got enough and so early on to do that. City will always be there, and United again. If they sign players, they will challenge in different areas. But I mean, it's for Liverpool to lose, in the sense they were so good last year. The points tally that they won it by. But, you know, as long as they don't take the foot off the gas, because I've seen teams do that as well. When, you know, you've won a league and then you sort of ease off. They've got to play even harder this year and work harder, because teams, you know, if they've stepped the foot off the gas, teams will get goals here and there against them.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you your top 4, but considering that you rattled off Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea and United, it's pretty...
No, you forgot Arsenal.
I thought you were just going to dismiss them because they were the first 4 that came to your head.
I am going to... They are the first 4, but if Arsenal will... I don't know why, I just think Arsenal will do unexpected things this season for some reason.
Did you watch them against Fulham?
Yeah, I love Willian, you see. I love him. And against Fulham, listen, I've probably predicted Fulham to go straight back down. And I know that's bad, but for obvious reasons, you know, you have to stay in the Premier League, you have to get really lucky or spend. And I just can't see how Fulham, especially after watching that as well, are going to get goals. And, you know, not concede against some of the talent that's in the Premier League.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The second of these sees Ian Wright.
I love watching great players play. I love watching great games.
And Sol Campbell sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Thursday, 17th of September. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot. Duggan! Oh, what a goal from Fabinho!
then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what would he do? He'd get a slap.
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Yeah, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you've missed David Myler and Wes Brown talking about the glory days that Wes Brown had at Manchester United, and also some time they spent together at Sunderland. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 087 180 180 is the number. You can WhatsApp us on that, or of course you can always use the hashtag OTBAM. It's myself and Tommy Rooney with you this morning all the way through until 10. Tommy, you're a Man United fan. That's bringing back some happy memories for you.
Morning, Ger. How are you? Yeah, I'd have a soft spot for Manchester United, you could say.
Mild obsession, but go on, yeah.
Mild obsession, yeah. Happy thoughts, yeah. I like Wes Brown as a footballer. The team that he played on in 2008 was probably one of the greatest times as a sports fan. Imagine when you get to watch Tevez, Rooney and Ronaldo as your team. One can only wonder how the Liverpool fans feel with Salah, Firmino and Mane. You can understand it. It was unbelievable when that was the team you were watching when you were a teenager. Did you think they were better than the 99 team?
No, because the 99 team overcomes the need to be a team who wins the Champions League first, and so therefore the team that comes after that are standing on their shoulders. I mean, maybe they might beat them in a pickup match, but the achievement of the 99 team is greater.
I have to be honest, I would have always thought that there was a really good argument to be made that 2008 team was better. And on paper, when you look at it, like Schmeichel versus Van der Sar, okay, you're probably going to go for Schmeichel. I think you're going for Vidic and Ferdinand over Stam and Janssen. And then left back, you're going for Dennis Irwin over Patrice Evra. But like in terms of quality, there isn't a huge amount of difference there in terms of what's needed in the game. Brown and Neville, you could say it's like for like. But then I think it's when you get to the midfield and when you consider what York and Cole are like up front, maybe I'm a little bit, maybe it's the fact that I was younger and that was the era I grew up in, that I'm kind of leaning towards Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo, because that midfield of Fletcher, Scholes and Carrick, I don't think I was convinced by it back then even. I
was going to say Park Ji-sung and the old Paul Scholes and Darren Fletcher Anderson. Don't do it for you. And Anderson. No,
they don't. Like, I've just looked back at the team there and it's just, how can you look beyond Giggs, Beckham, Scholes and Nicky Butt and Roy Keane?
You can't. It turns out you can't.
Yeah.
There's loads for us to talk about today. The guidelines have been published. We now have a 5.5 grade scheme when it comes to telling us what part of the country, what part of the COVID lockdown we're in. We're all trying to get to number 1, but it turns out we're at number 3, 2.5, 2 and a bit. Who knows? We're going to get to that a little bit later on. There was people are giving out about the floating of the 5,000 potential attendees at sports events, like it was like we couldn't actually find who was doing it. I mean, somebody leaked this, somebody printed it, somebody put it in the public sphere. So they're the people who were used by members of the government to float this kite. Like, this is there's a thing like disinformation. Oh, it's WhatsApp groups and it's social media and but actually somebody somewhere leaked that information to see what the response would be like, or somebody from one of the sports organisations leaked it to try and put pressure on the government. That's how this whole thing works. So like, if we could just. I read a lot of the papers this morning and they're giving out about people, there were whispers about 5,000. Who was whispering? Where was the whispers? To point out who you're giving out about and call them out as opposed to anything else. So the main thing for me from the sports organisations was that the three of them were going to work together to build protocols to get back to multiple thousands of people at sports grounds. It's great. I think they probably should have been doing that a couple of months ago, but finally the fact that they're all working together is great formally. Apparently they've been having discussions with the minister over the last month or so. it is September. You know, everybody kind of retreated into their own territory, tried to get their own house in order, and maybe now is the first time that they're getting their heads above the parapet to actually have a look around and go, actually, we've got a lot of shared territory here. Literally, October, November, December is going to be the busiest months of the year for all the sports organisations. They all have massive matches that they would like to have significant crowds for at a couple of stadiums around the country, and building protocols around that would be a really good way to proactively try and inject some information into it. If you look back at what the source material for some of the NEFIT pronouncements, it's media sources around the world. It's like, you know, sure. They don't actually have a team of scientists working away in labs or a team of actuaries working away on an Excel sheet. They're gathering information the same way everybody else is. So if the three sports organisations can go off and engage some high-level people to come back with a robust plan that says we think this is safe, if we have access, the only access to Croke Park is through Clonliffe Road, and the only exit is allowed through the other side of the stadium, and it's a one-way thoroughfare, and we'll only have people in, and we do the same for the Aviva, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, that all makes sense, you know, and we'll steward it from 2 miles away, and you'll have to make your time slot or your ticket disappears. Who's going to complain about that as a spectator? No one. And so we should be. There are ways to do this.
Yeah, I think you're right about a few things there. It's great to see them working together and trying to put the protocols in place. You're also right that it's a pity that they weren't doing it earlier in the summer, because there was a time when the GAA were slapped across the face with the fact that there was no crowds going to be allowed at games for a couple of weeks, and they felt like they were being singled out. But what I would say, as somebody who's played club championship in a couple of different grounds this summer, it stands out a lot more when you're playing on a county ground. The fact that you could definitely get more people into it. When you're at a regional ground or you're at a club ground around the country, even if it's a B game or a second team's game, crowds are going to turn up to those games. People want to go to them, and it's much more difficult to keep a structure of social distancing. But when you're talking about a place like Croke Park, in my opinion, if this plan is living with COVID, and it's to kind of show how we're going to map out how we're going to live over the next 6 to 9 months. The next 3 months are going to be very important in terms of adhering to all these guidelines. And if we're able to create a framework and a structure where you can get 5,000 people into an 80,000 seater stadium and you do it safely, well, then that's going to be great. Like, I know you were talking about the Armagh final on Monday morning, and genuinely, like, that's the first time. It actually felt like a throwback, like you were watching an old game. There was only 400 people allowed in at the north. I don't know if there was more than 400 people there. It certainly felt like there was thousands and thousands of people there. I know that there weren't, but maybe there could have been marginally over 400. I don't know. But it really felt like an occasion, that final. It really felt like it was a sporting event. Playing club championship behind closed doors, sure, the standards are still there and the quality of the game is still there, and what it means to yourself and your teammates is still there, but it's not really the club championship that we all know, or championship football as we know it. It's not a professional sport. No one's paying for money. So we might come back to it a little later on.
Yeah, we definitely will.
I think that it needs to... 200 isn't enough. I would struggle to see the point of playing some games, some sports, if it's only 200, but we can come back to it a little later.
0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us by WhatsApp this morning. It's 9 minutes past 8. We want to turn to the big story of the day, and that is that Pat Smullen passed away yesterday at the age of 43. Joining us now to talk and reflect on his career, we have Johnny Ward, and I'm delighted to say we also have Johnny Murtagh with us. Johnny Murtagh, if I might start with you, you would have been up against Pat Smullen at various stages in his career. Obviously, it's a tragedy for his family. Can you talk to us a little bit about just how amazing a talent Pat Smullen was, please?
Yeah, listen, it's very sad here this morning. I think the racing world, you know, not just in Ireland, Europe, the world have mourned, you know, a true legend, champion jockey 9 times in Ireland. You know, when he was coming up, I was kind of at the top, so we didn't always see eye to eye. I went to England, I came back, he was at the top. We definitely didn't see eye to eye. But, you know, a brilliant, brilliant jockey, a great man, and everybody, you can see by the reaction, everybody that met Pat Smullen has nothing but good words to say about him, because that's the kind of guy he was. fierce competitor, mentally very strong, physically strong. You couldn't intimidate him. You couldn't bully him. You just knew that there was going to be no gimmies when you met Pat head-to-head in a finish. And I think he drove me on. He made me better. But, like as I said, for the racing world, a very, very sad occasion. And I feel very, great sadness this morning.
That quality of rider that he was, and because obviously it's an incredibly competitive industry here in Ireland. We're constantly told that we produce some of the best horse people in the world. The jockeys are at the very top of that tree, and to be at the top of the tree in Ireland suggests that there was a talent there as well as the competitive streak.
Oh yeah, listen, you could see him coming along. He was champion apprentice. He was second jockey to John Ox. He was first jockey to Dermot Wells, so the talent was always there. Everybody seen it from a young age, but then he had to improve himself, which he did. Every year he seemed to get better. His confidence was sky high there in the end, and he had the talent, but he had the work ethic to go with it. He worked very hard. He knew he had to work on it to stay ahead of the game, and he was the man in the weigh room, in the end, that everybody wanted to be like. Everybody wanted to be like Pat Smullen, because, what you got was what you seen. It was just, he was the main man.
Johnny Ward, we speak about it every Friday, about how there's that great generation of national hunt jockeys, and nothing came along underneath them in flat. It wasn't a million miles away in terms of the quality of jockeys that were there. Like, as Johnny Murtagh just said, he was there. Mick Canaan was there before that as well. To come up in their wake and to establish yourself at the level that Pat Smullen did suggested that there's a steeliness in the character there as well.
Yeah, one of his main attributes, definitely that steeliness. I suppose in terms of, absolutely natural riders, maybe Smullen would say that Smullen might have said himself that he maybe was a little bit behind the likes of Michael Canaan. And when you look at the golden generation, and Johnny has gone on to be a trainer now, but when Johnny can reflect on the fact that he rode with Richard Hughes and Michael Canaan, Kieran Fallon and Pat Smullen, to name but a few in that era alone of Irish riders, you're talking about a real, the creme de la creme in terms of many generations. And Smullen, I think as a rider, he probably improved with experience to the extent that by the time that he was cruelly taken away from the game of riding and had to retire, I think he was essentially, one of the best riders in the world without a shadow of a doubt. And it was very hard to pick flaws in his riding ability. And from the front, I thought he was probably, Colin Keane has maybe taken over the mantle as, a front-running rider who's just never seems to get it wrong. But Smullen was amazingly good at that. He rode for Dermot Wells, and they had a great relationship of understanding of each other, I think. They definitely kind of bounced off each other well. And Smullen probably maybe didn't ride in as many top class races over the course of his career as befitted his talents, because he didn't have the job, didn't have the job that Johnny would have had in Ballydoyle or that others would have had in Ballydoyle, but he was more than capable of that. And I love the fact that Johnny reflects on the fact that they didn't get on, because just because someone passed away doesn't mean that you don't reflect on the fact that these were people who had their moments, because they were utterly dedicated. And one of the things that I found most illuminating about Pat in terms of what he spoke about in his illness was the fact that he did not give his family as much attention as he would have liked to, because he was so single-minded about riding. And he said, one of the things that this has given me, this illness, is the fact that it's given me a sense of perspective in terms of my family. And one of the reasons Pat was so good as a rider was because he was utterly dedicated, and that was one of the reasons he was top class, and that was one of the reasons why he won as many races as he did at all levels.
Yeah, Johnny Murtagh, I think it's important that we reflect on the quality of the races that he won and the quality of the horses that he was on and the career that he had, but it's also how public his battle with cancer was. And, no one is forced to go out and raise money for cancer research. And I'm sure it must have been incredibly difficult for him to talk publicly about that and to be a public face for that. But to have the strength to be able to do that and then to carry so many people with you is, I think, again, a testimony to the man. That's the other side of this as well, is that, I'm sure everybody came up and had their own battles in a competitive sport. You have to, because it's cutthroat. But at the same time, people rallied round in the Curragh that day And that's kind of one of those abiding memories from Irish racing and Irish sport over the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, we seen that every day with him. I know the racing community and the racing people would have seen that every day with him. But I think when he started that fundraising, I think outside the racing, that all the other people around the world got to see the other side of Pat Smullen. That steely determination. Listen, when he got diagnosed first, it was not a good outcome. We knew it was not going to be a good outcome, but he went through the treatment, and I genuinely thought this guy is going to pull through. It's not going to beat this guy. It's just another hurdle that's coming his way. He's going to overcome it. I met him at a couple of functions. In the last 2 years, he seemed in great form. Always very positive. Always very positive. His mind was always very positive. And then to go and do the fundraising, to start, to create the race that brought together all the champions from all over, Mackay, Walsh, Charlie Swan, Paul Carberry. No one else would have done that, only for Pat Smullen. You wouldn't have done it for anybody else. So I think that's what he had. He had that. And listen, I thought, listen, he's going to come through. He's going to come through. But it was only last week speaking to Kevin O'Ryan when I said, "Oh, how is Pat?" Just by his reaction, I got the feeling that all was not well. But it's a hammer blow. But I think everybody outside racing got to see the human being he was, the man he was. They got a feel for him, and as I said, you couldn't but just love the guy. As I said, I had those great battles with him. We were head to head on many occasions, but deep down, I really loved the guy.
I suspect, Johnny, you respect somebody more if they're coming at you and not backing down.
Oh well, listen, that's what you expect. You to be the best, you need to compete against the best and beat the best, and that's what I felt I did every day of the week, because there was no off day with Pat. Like, there was no Monday in Roscommon, there was no Friday in Dundalk, there was no Saturday at the Curragh. There was no day he was never on a bad day. He turned up the same every day. He turned up the same weight. He turned up ready for action, and you knew what was ahead of you. You knew it's going to be tough here today.
Johnny Ward, one of the things about the flat horses, as we again talk about every Friday in Friday Night Racing, is that they become they're harder for people to follow over the long term. Obviously, you don't have a 5 or 6 or 7 year career back in these horses generally, the way you do with the National Hunt horses. So, and sometimes the importance of the jockey's relationship with a specific horse is it's actually more important because there's such a shorter relationship, and we don't kind of come to associate the way you would do with the National Hunt horses, Ruby or Barry Gardy and specific horses. What were the horses that Pat Smullen that people are going to remember him for?
Yeah, I guess it'll chiefly be Harzand and, winning the Derby for Dermot Wells, at that stage of Pat's career where I suppose he probably suspected it might be beyond him. Dermot, wouldn't, be expected to have lively contenders for Epsom sort of that much, really, and Pat to get a ride on Harzand, who, if a lot of us who were into the game will remember, obviously, that Harzand was an extremely doubtful runner on the day of the race. He got some sort of little issue with his foot that they had to deal with, and it was really a race against time. I suppose for me, the two horses I'd remember him most would be probably him and Grey Swallow. And Grey Swallow winning the Irish Derby, it was a really special, victory for the Well family. He'd obviously have ridden lots of very good horses down the year, the likes of Vinnie Rowe as well, Go and Go, and Well would have had a lot of top class horses that Pat would have ridden. In terms of, I suppose, his Irish achievements, you'd look at obviously champion titles, but you'd look at his record around Galway for Dermot Weld, and Harzand, probably, as much as it was late in his career, I think that's probably the most fitting tribute to him, and probably the one that gave him the most satisfaction. And Pat Healy, the photographer who was so brilliant on Friday Night Racing when we had him on there in the last year, whenever it was, he had a lovely tweet last night about how he was getting the same taxi home to the airport after the derby with Tarzan, and he was a little bit concerned. He said, Pat, we're going to struggle to make this flight. And I think Pat said something like, Pat, I'd absolutely float home today. Don't worry about that. That's how much the derby meant to him. I think we forget that sometimes. It's a horse race, but this is the top. It's like a manager winning, the league or win the cup final or win the World Cup. And it was sad that Tarzan would be one of his last big winners. And, one of the things as well about Pat, you could say a million things that would really, you'd admire, was he was a long time retiring. When you get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and you're a jockey at any level, I imagine, you got to be told that's it. But Pat didn't retire for quite some time, and that's just a measure of the man. He wanted to go out only when he was actually forced and compelled to, because that was the competitor he was. And what he did afterwards in terms of the year and a half that he was out of the saddle was, I don't think will ever be topped by any jockey in terms of just making you appreciate life. And anyone who would have spoken to Pat over the last year and a half, just remember that your problems are little ones. It's very easy to say, we lose perspective and all that, and it's a bit of a cliche. But with Pat Smullen, that I felt that very, very deeply. Any time I spoke to him or texted him and got a positive response. The last text I sent to him, he texted me back asking me or wishing me well, hoping that I was well, and it just, your heart melts in moments like that. And a fellow who's terminally ill is asking you how you are, and he was a special person.
Yeah, Johnny Murtagh, I think that kind of sums it up in many respects. It's a legacy on the track, the Derby win in 2016, but it's also a legacy off the track.
It's probably his legacy off the track. That's what everybody's seen. As I said, we seen that every day, so it's easy for us. But I think everybody's seen the man he was outside the track. And just going on what Johnny says, listen, we had a big winner on Saturday. And one of the first texts I got through was, well done, a great win, Pat Smullen. So, but he was class right up to the end.
Lads, thanks both. I know it's not easy to talk about somebody who you've got so much respect for the morning after you find out that he's passed away, but you've done it really eloquently. My thanks to both Johnny Murtagh and Johnny Ward for joining us here on OTB AM this morning to pay some testimony to Pat Smullen, who passed away at the age of 43, leaving behind a family, 3 kids, and an incredible legacy both on and off the track. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, you can tweet the show at Off the Ball. You can use the hashtag OTBAM, or you can always get us on 0879 180 180. It is time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
So I will start with some of the tabloids for you here this morning. Back page of, there it is, the OTBsports.com. Jockey Pat Smullen dies, age 43. We've just been talking about that. Wes Brown was on the football show last night as part of our Paddy Power special. The genius of Roy Keane and Sir Alex Ferguson goes into great detail about that. The news came through as well yesterday that Paul Galvin is stepping down as the senior football manager of the Wexford Footballers, and Jack Grealish got his new deal. We'll talk about that in a moment. And scored a goal last night for Villa at Burton. The Irish Sun with you this morning. Their back page is Gareth Bale. He's one of their loans. He's one of their loans. Gareth Bale. He's one of their loans. You're supposed to sing it, but I'm not going to. Jose and Daniel Levy closing in on a 20 million real deal. So it looks like they're trying to pull the old bait and switch and get rid of Dele Alli in some kind of make weight for that deal. Weight is finally Oba. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has signed his new deal worth 250 grand a week, or 350 grand a week if you factor in all the loyalty bonuses and appearances that he's going to have to get there. And then there's a picture of Pat Smullen on the back of that as well. One of the broadsheets in England is actually reporting on the deal as a 55 million deal for Aubameyang, which I like the way that they're reporting on that. London calling, and it's both Bale and Aubameyang, and that's his new deal, and the potential for Spurs to be getting Gareth Bale, which would be good for Spurs and good for the Premier League. Kenny's pay up to 540 grand. More details coming from the new book out this week, Champagne Football, by Paul Rowan and Mark Tighe, saying that Stephen Kenny, who's currently deferring 50% of his salary under the terms of a cost-cutting package, will actually end up getting 540 grand next year as the Ireland boss. The other Mirror, Real Love, Real Deals. United blow as Madrid outcast Bale closes on amazing Spurs return. It's where he wants to be, says his agent Jonathan Barnett. And Real Deals, Grealish, I want to be a success in the Villa project. And I see a big future for myself at Arsenal. Is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang worth twice what Jack Grealish is worth, Tommy? On a week-by-week basis? Because that's what he's getting.
I think Arsenal needed to keep him. Arsenal had to pay the money to keep him because...
More expensive to live in London, obviously, than it is in Birmingham. You pick up a nice gaff in Birmingham, a couple of million, but like a couple of million's only going to get you, pokey little apartment in London these days.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. I think Arsenal needed to pay whatever they needed to pay. It would have been it would have been just horrendous if they had lost Aubameyang. Jeez. Whether he's worth that for Jack Grealish, I don't know. I think Aston Villa are going to turn over a massive profit for Jack Grealish at some stage. Luckily for them, it's not this year.
The Daily Mail, not worth it. Disillusionment at sports, new 200 crowd rule. We'll get into this in a minute. Bale is hot to tot, and FAI agreed a 450 grand payoff for Delaney. So the details in Champagne football are starting to come out as the book, I think it gets published tomorrow officially. To the Irish Independent, GA submit venue plans to cater for more spectators. This is Colm Key's story, but it's all the bodies together, I think. Tribe chiefs caught in COVID storm. This is an amazing story from Galway, if it's true. Michael Verney says an investigation is underway into whether a GA club allowed a player return from America and take part in a key relegation clash without going into 14-day quarantine. Controversy centres around, I don't know if this is the correct pronunciation, Beagh, B-E-A-G-H. Any Galway listeners out there can correct me on that, 0879 180 180. But
I would have guessed Baha, but I don't know.
B-E-A-G-H, Baha, as in Ishka Baha.
Or Ba. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find that out.
Beagh.
Yeah.
Beagh or Ba. Anyway, who may have breached COVID-19 restrictions to play in last Saturday's relegation tie against Kinvara, Baha won the game with 6 points to spare, sending Kinvara into relegation final on scoring difference. Kinvara raised concerns before the game, saying, "We think he might have been in America. Could anybody check on this? Because there's a global pandemic on." And so there's now been correspondence between Galway officials and Croke Park, and I have a little bit more sympathy with this than I do with the situation in Longford when an under-16 game nearly had an entire club thrown out for 48 weeks. Galvin quits model role after less than a year at helm, as well as the other story there.
On that Kinvara Beagh story, if Kinvara had those worries before the game and they made their points before the game and it was a relegation playoff, I'm a little surprised that they didn't refuse to play the game.
You just got to take people at face value, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do, and I'm sure there's going to be an investigation into it, but that's a pretty serious thing to be worried about if somebody's travelling back from the States to play a game of football. And if I was in one of those dressing rooms, if I was in the dressing room that was worried about it, that would be playing on my mind during the game.
Yeah, I mean, can I ask if one of your teammates had come back from the States, would there have been a welcome back with open arms by all the Muppets in the press room attitude towards him, or would there have been a you can stay outside there, no thanks?
Well, thankfully it didn't happen.
No, but if it did, I'm saying it
on a personal level, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I'm not living at home in Meath at the minute. I'm travelling across the country. I was travelling across the country to play football. I'd be seriously questioning what I'm doing if there was something like that after happening. I would not feel comfortable with something like that. Travelling back from a place like the States. My cousin was home from the summer and he quarantined for 2 weeks, and I didn't get to see him. I'd love to have seen him, but he was home from the States, and you just couldn't take that chance to go and visit.
Even after the quarantine of 2 weeks?
Well, he was gone.
All right.
He was only home for 2 weeks, so that was it.
8:30 this morning here, 8:29 on OTB AM. Tottenham make move to sign Bale. Aubameyang stays for 55 million. That's what his deal is worth, and that is over 3 years. So that's pretty good. 250 grand a week and near 350 grand a week once you include loyalty payments and bonuses. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. 55 million in 3 years. These are some of the biggest contracts being handed out in world sport. Almost quarterback money. Spurs close in and Bale return. And then there's a picture.
Thankfully, Arsenal made those cuts earlier in the year,
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Jack Grealish as well, celebrating after a 3-1 win for Villa last night, and he's worth half. And Aubameyang, I mean, it's good money for Villa if you can get it. I've already done that. Spurs open talks with Real over Bale. And then the Irish Times, Gordon Darcy's column is there lead today. Ulster showed a naivety in failing to expose Leinster's line-out that won't cut it in France. And Malky Clerkin has a Q&A about the roadmap for sports fans. And finally, the Examiner. Great piece from Kieran Shannon about Cork's 1990 double, which we'll get into a little bit later on, with a hurler and a footballer from 1990. And their lead is Farewell Pat, a true gent who is an inspiration to anyone facing adversity. Tommy Lyons there, and also they've got the Paul Galvin story. And Thurles will host Cork against Munster. Sorry, host Cork against Waterford in the Munster hurling semi-final on Halloween. I mean, it's going to be great, these games. Like, what's going to be under lights, even if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Stick the lights on.
They are going to be great. They're going to be great to watch. There. What are you most looking forward to watching?
Dublin Kerry in the All-Ireland football final. I mean,
can that happen? I don't think that can happen this year, can it?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? They're separate sides. Are you saying it's a semi-final?
Separate sides.
I thought they were.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Well,
okay.
Dublin Kerry whenever it happens, right? Like,
yeah. 100%. 100% Dublin Kerry. Where are we starting with the stories here? Are we looking at Gareth Bale first, or are we sticking with the crowds?
Stick with the crowds. What do you think? Because you are a GA man, so what do you think? You were saying earlier at the top of the show, so people who've just joined us, you were saying that you're not entirely convinced that games behind closed doors are worth it, or even games with 200 people are worth it.
Well, when I was making that point, a lot of it stood for... it was around the early times of the club championship season, and I suppose I was questioning. And again, it's personal reasons, and it's down to why we play and stuff. But club championships mean so much to people in those parishes and in those clubs. We know the GA is an amateur game, but there's obviously much more of a monetary value on the intercounty championships. There's sponsors involved. There's broadcast deals involved. There's a lot of money on the table there. So I can absolutely understand a lot of reasons why an intercounty championship might go ahead, even if it's behind closed doors. But for club championship games, like playing games without a crowd, it took a lot of it away. And like, I'm not saying that because I'm a big time charity full forward who likes scoring goals and then turning around and celebrating to the crowd.
You do. It's fine. That's fine.
I've never celebrated a goal that I've scored in Park Talton, Ger. Never once. I've scored a few.
Okay, I was going to say, how many times is that? Why did you not celebrate? What? That's weird, Tommy.
I wouldn't be that type of a footballer, so the crowd wouldn't mean that to me in that sense. But where the crowd means something is the conversations around the games, and in a small parish. I'm from a tiny parish. It's got a pub that's been closed for 6 months. It's got a church that's been open in the ways that it has to be open. It's got a school and it's got a football pitch, and there isn't really much more going on. And for the people in that parish, we would have a fervent support who would turn up to games, make noise, beep horns, intimidate the other team. It's like poor Leeds United going up to the Premier League and they don't have their fans to intimidate everybody else when they land down Dallin Road. Like when you play for a small club like mine, the fans, it means so much. But it's the conversations that happen around the game. It's the fact that people are getting out of the house and they're able to do something on a Sunday that's maybe a little bit different than what they usually do. And to me, the occasion means as much than the actual game. It may as well just be a training game if that's the case. And if it's just a training game, I don't know.
Okay,
I'm not sure how it would mean.
But doing nothing and not having those games and not having any training sessions and not having people congregate, not having any community, like, is it not better to begin the process of recovery as opposed to waiting until everything's fine again? Perfect is the enemy of good. Is it what's that phrase?
100%, Chair. And I think that if this is a roadmap, it needs to be a roadmap that progresses along the way. And like Micheál Martin shot it down yesterday. Whoever put out the 5,000 attendance conversation, whoever leaked that out or wherever it came from, grand. But him saying that there's been no discussion around it, I'm not sure I believe that. I would say that this is a roadmap. There has to be a progression along the way. 200 people means, like, it's not really like, it's a lottery. It's 50 tickets for each club. It's going to cause more war and strife in a club than it is for anything else. And sure, I can understand that at a regional ground where it may be difficult to put social distancing in place. But if you're in a stand, in a seated area, it's very easy to map it out and just say you can have a certain amount of people within a certain amount of seats and you spread it out that way. And even in a stadium like Park Talton where you can get 12,000 in, you could easily have 400, 600 at that. and you can map it out. And as you said earlier on, have the stewards there, and then I think you're keeping everyone happy, and everyone's having their occasion, they're having their day out, and there's progression there, and people are getting back to normal life a little bit. But 200, it's kind of a halfway house there, but I don't think anything's really happened.
It does feel like there hasn't been anything to cling on to in terms of, if everything goes well, we'll get to this point, and at that point we'll know much more. It was like opening the schools was like, let's jam everybody back in. And yeah, I saw people making the comparisons between the outcome in the Dáil when there was a suspected case versus what happens in a meat factory versus what happens in a school. And it's like, well, it's clearly one rule for our politicians and one rule for the rest of the country. And look, maybe that's the way it needs to be. We've elected these as our best and brightest to lead us through the storm, and what a great job they're doing leading us through this current storm. I mean, it definitely feels like the coming together of the three big sports organisations to try and build a template to look around the world. They put somebody who I think everybody would have faith in charge of that committee, and I think it's a really good and welcome moment in Irish sport where you have the three big sports organisations working together with a shared common goal to try and achieve something that's literally for the benefit of the whole country, assuming it can be safely done. And I think that's to be welcomed. So
you'd have to assume it can be safely done, though. Like there has to be.
I'm making no assumptions. I'm just like, yeah, right, absolutely. But like, let's just see a little bit of science. Let's just see, because I mean, the science is evolving. It's fair to say as time goes on in terms of what we know and what we don't know, and virality and viral loads and all that kind of stuff. And it'd be great if they had like a core of scientists who were able to say, this is best practice, this is what they're doing. Like in 3 weeks' time, we'll know exactly what the repercussions were for having people in Kansas City and in Jacksonville and in Dallas at games in significant numbers. And it'd be great to get that information and data and go, this is how they did it, this didn't work. There was an outbreak because people went to the pub beforehand or people went to the pub afterwards, or they gathered in a restaurant. And so we understand that, like on match days, restaurants within a 5-mile radius need to be exclusively takeaway or something, and either you do that or you don't do that. And like whatever needs to be considered should be being considered, but you don't get the impression that the government are considering any of this kind of stuff, probably because in fairness it's not a huge priority. Their priority is keeping the hospitals empty from ICUs and having enough room in the ICUs to deal with people, and also making sure that the education system doesn't fall over. So they haven't done a great job of either of those, and they don't have a great track record of fixing those in the past. So let's wait and see what happens. Let's talk about the Gareth Bale situation. As a Manchester United fan, do you want him at your club?
Right now, I'm going to say that I wouldn't want Manchester United to turn to Gareth Bale. I really wouldn't. I think that if Jadon Sancho signed, it'd be an upgrade, and it would add a lot to what Solskjær is doing, and he might fit in with what he's doing. To me, Gareth Bale to Manchester United feels like an Ed Woodward signing when David Moyes was in charge, or Van Gaal was in charge, or Mourinho was in charge. And maybe that's because they were rumoured to sign Gareth Bale every single summer that was going on. But I just think that is going to be another Alexis Sanchez-esque deal. It's been reported in The Athletic and in a couple other places this morning that it's more a Levy deal than a Mourinho deal at the minute, that he's got a soft spot for Gareth Bale. It's been talked about that he would add character to a dressing room that's fairly flat. You can talk about character and Gareth Bale. And I'm not sure if Gareth Bale would fit into the type of character that I would want walking into a Manchester United dressing room that has started healing. It started a healing process, Ger, over the last 6 to 12 months, where they've got rid of a bit of dead wood. They've kind of loosened a couple of the heavy hitters on the wage bill. And how on earth are Spurs going to afford even half of Gareth Bale's £600,000 a week from Real Madrid? There's talk that Dele Alli is going to be shifted as part of a make-weight and that, but I just don't know. I wouldn't be enthused by Gareth Bale joining. I'd far rather a Jadon Sancho or even a Jack Grealish.
Well, Jack Grealish isn't going to happen now. Obviously, he's going to stay for the 1 year, and whatever the buyout clause is, will be established, and that'll be leaked next summer, and that'll be the great transfer saga of 2021. I think there's probably a couple of seasons left in Gareth Bale where he's impactful, and the other side of this is it's a loan deal, so you get to ship him back to Real Madrid next year if it fails. The issue with Alexis Sanchez was that they were stuck on the hook for a long period of time. I actually think Gareth Bale, if you can get a 70% portion of what he was when he was the best player in the Premier League by a country mile, then you're getting somebody who's going to be impactful for you over the course of the season. Bear in mind, it's an unbelievably long season. There are competitions to be won and trophies to be won that are meaningful when you're Solskjær and you're still hunting for your trophies to build up that kind of I won this trophy, which seems to be currency in football. I think that that's important. I think that you should absolutely give yourself the opportunity to sign Gareth Bale at this point. Look, he's not perfect, but what if it works out and you get 3 seasons of Gareth Bale who's like a supreme athlete?
Yeah. Like, that's true. Like, I just feel like I've been fairly turned off Gareth Bale over the last 2 years, and maybe that's the way that it's gone down at Real Madrid, and maybe that's completely unfair in Gareth Bale's character, and he's actually somebody who will lead Spurs to the top 4 this season if he signs for Spurs. It'd be interesting to see where Mourinho would play him if he did sign. Like, Heung-min Son plays off the left, and they're pretty solid on that side. Is he going to put Bale over to the right-hand side and replace Lucas Moura? Is he going to play him through the middle and give Harry Kane a bit of a break? I don't know. I think that Spurs aren't going to get both Sergio Reguilón, the left back, and Gareth Bale. So, United's probably going to get one of them. I'd take Reguilón, the left back, to be honest.
All right. Well, we'll see. 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to give us a comment this morning. You can always get in touch with us using the hashtag OTB AM. 8:41 for you here. And a reminder, OTB Sports, in association with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The second episode sees Ian Wright and Sol Campbell sit down for an in-depth chat. Going to be brought to you on OTB's social channels and on OTB Sports Radio tomorrow, Thursday the 17th of September. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. Now, today is the 30th anniversary of the Cork double being completed in 1990. The hurlers obviously won a fortnight ago, 30 years ago, and the footballers won officially today, 30 years ago. So Cork GAA and Marymount Hospice are calling on Cork people to go red for Cork. It's the 16th of September, marking the 30th anniversary, as I said, of the GAA double being done for the last time in 1990. It's to drive awareness of an outstanding athletic achievement for the county. The initiative, which was the brainchild of current Cork GAA hurler Conor Cahalane, whose father Niall was on the winning 1990 team football, is going to raise much needed charitable funds for Marymount Hospice. To get involved, the people of Cork are being asked to go red today, to wear your jersey or red clothing or accessorise or red up your remote office or your home or your car, and then please to donate to the campaign through the online campaign link, which is on idonate.ie, and it's /Go Red for Cork. And I'm delighted to say we've got Larry Tompkins with us this morning, and we'll hear from Fitzgerald in a couple of minutes. Larry, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
It's been a week of reminiscing about 1990. How has that been for you? It must seem like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's it's hard to believe it's 30 years. It's gone so fast, but the memories are still there. Fantastic, just a fantastic day, and just fantastic, I suppose, year for Cork, like to win the double, like the hurlers winning two weeks before that, and then the footballers to do it. I think the scenes when we come back down on the Monday night, those type of scenes, I don't think we'd love to see them again, but it was incredible that night, and there was 100,000 people, I say, around Cork City that night, and it was just a magic feeling, and just so, I suppose, just honoured to have captained a great county to have won the All-Ireland.
You didn't know it at the time, but that was kind of the end of the great Cork-Meath rivalry. At that stage, after the football, after you made it 2-2, it was clearly the two best teams in the country fighting it out after a long period of time where you'd really been at each other's throats, literally and metaphorically, for the previous 4 years.
Yeah, look, people ask the question and still ask the questions, was the hurlers put any more pressure on us going for the double, but that wasn't the case because, as you mentioned there, we just had massive rivalry against Meath over a long period of time. There were the two giants of football, and Meath had come out the upper hand on us in 87 and 88 after a replay. 88 probably a match where we felt we should have won it. We didn't, and then in 1990 in the league semi-final on Easter Sunday, Meath beat us again. So, look, our focus and complete focus was to try and beat Meath, and we were delighted, believe it or not, to see Meath in an All-Ireland final because as a team we needed to prove ourselves, and if we didn't beat Meath on that day, like probably our previous All-Ireland final victory against Mayo would have been certainly diminished as regards the team. So our complete focus that day was Meath, and we wanted them so much to try and just prove ourselves. That was the main thing.
The other thing is, Larry, sorry, Tommy, but the other thing is that automatically makes you a great team. You know, you were already a great team, almost irrespective of that, because you'd been to All-Ireland finals. You'd killed off the greatest Kerry team of all time. But there wouldn't have been enough credit. There wouldn't have been enough kind of, you know, your place in history wouldn't have been assured if you didn't actually beat Meath that day.
No, and like, look, we would have accepted that. Like, it's look, when the top teams come along, and for a long number of years here, the battle was to try and beat Kerry here in the Munster Championship. But we had that, and we had them. We were dominant against Kerry. So, like, our next challenge was Meath. Like, and look, you know, if you want to be seriously All-Ireland contenders and winners, like, you need to beat the best that's out there. And at that time, Meath were the best. And you know, we certainly would have come away from that if we didn't get victory and unable to beat them. You know, the question mark would have been always there. Like, yeah, you were okay, you just won your All-Ireland, but you know, you didn't beat Meath, and that would have been hanging over us. So, look, it was a very, very important game for us to win, and you know, I think that the focus of our team on the day was 1,000%, and I think overall, you know, there was a lot of hatred at the time and ferocious battles against Meath. You know, I would have played against Meath like when my Kildare days, back when I was myself and Shea with Batty were the same when we were 16 years of age. So I grew up with all them Meath fellas, and I knew how good they were. So, like, look, it was just a crowning moment for that Cork team, because they really deserved it, because they were an outstanding team, and thanks be to God. Like, that, at the end of the day, both teams got 2 All-Irelands each. I suppose it's a fair call on both sides in relation to their dominance over that period of time.
Larry, you mentioned hatred there. I actually watched the game back recently enough. We did a piece on it and Off the Ball on the 1990 All-Ireland final. Was it really hatred? Because when you watched the game back, I think one of the lines that was said after we watched the game was that there was a couple of tackles that wouldn't be allowed in rugby nowadays. Is that what it was like when you were out there, when you were playing against the likes of Jerry McAtee and Liam Hayes in midfield? Was it hatred on the pitch?
Look, it was those guys were good mates of mine, like, and you know, Meath, you have to give them, like, Meath play the game, like, when they go between the White Lions, it's war, like, and you know, they were a hell of a team, like, they had massive players like that, a forward line as good as any has emerged, like, in football. And, like, all throughout the field, they were strong, they were physical, and by God, they could play football. So, like, I suppose when you meet a team so many times, and the clashes are so intense, and it was intense at half-time, it was intense after the match with the followers, it was just, I suppose, a lot of tension there, and I suppose that's what makes the game. Like, you know, people talk about, like, you know, the rivalry with clubs and the neighbouring clubs, like, it's similar to clashes that you have against county teams maybe on a frequent basis, and that's the way we were with Meath. Like, and I suppose for a good number of years we felt 87 Meath were the better team, 88 we felt we were the better team, and we didn't get over the line. That 1990 semi-final in the league turned out a nasty affair. It was an Easter Sunday. It was just probably what we needed to drive it on further to try and beat them in the All-Ireland final in September. And look, that's what happens in sport, and probably that's the making of any sport, is that intense, great rivalry. And I suppose both teams now, like, are very friendly with another, and I suppose that was culminated a lot in relation to the passing of John Kearns here when he passed away, and we had an enormous amount of Meath players come down for that funeral.
Just on John, there's a moment in the game, but I don't know when you look back on it, what you think, what clicked for Cork that day. But John made a save in the second half that day, and hands up, I'm a Meath man, Larry. So I probably feel like Meath let that one slip away that day. But is there a moment in that game, or is there somebody in particular that when you look back as captain, you're like, that's the man, that's the reason we won that All-Ireland final? Dave Barry obviously had a great game. Shea Fahy had a great game, but is there something that in your head you go 30 years on, that's why we did it?
And of course there's moments, like, and I think that, I suppose for Cork, like, that day, it was a low scoring game, but every ball was contested, like, with a 100%, 1000%. The clashes were intense all over the field, like Colm O'Neill early on got sent off after 26 minutes. You know, he was certainly well on top of Mick Lyons. He was having the game of his life, Colm. But of course, Shea Fahy had one of those games like that you'd dream of, like scored 4 points and play from midfield. And our backs were superb, like when the chips were really down. And Meath were always, that last 10 minutes, like in a game, like Meath really came at you really with force, like, and they were like an army coming at you in waves, like, and of course our backs held out tremendously well. And you mentioned the save with John Kearns. Of course, it was a critical stage of the game. I think there was only less than 10 minutes to go. I'd say it was about maybe 6 or 7 minutes to go, and he smothered a shot on Brian Stafford. And that was a crucial stage because a goal in the game, like, would have probably been the difference of a team winning it or losing it. So, yeah, there was massive clashes all over the field that day, and just the intensity was incredible. And even though it was a low-scoring game, there was plenty of entertainment.
Larry, when did you do your cruciate?
Yeah, it was about 15 minutes to go. It was a clash with Martin O'Connell, totally accidental. Both of us coming head on to get the ball. He just got there that bit quicker than me, and I suppose I went in kind of with my right leg, and unfortunately my knee decided to go another way, and I felt I was in serious trouble, but I bounced up off the ground and tried to just get on with it, and as I said, it was just probably the adrenaline and the motivation, and I suppose that we needed to beat Meath, and that was in my head all the way through,
And did you have to kick a free after that?
I kicked 2 points afterwards, yeah, from frees, yeah. So, yeah, the lads said they were too easy frees anyway. So I wasn't too bad.
My recollection is that one of them was from the 40, no?
Well, I don't think it was out that far, but I'll take that if you've given it to me.
Right, yeah, no, totally. And when did you get diagnosed? So it was a partial tear of the ACL?
Yeah, I really done severe damage. I actually severed the cruciate ligament and my medial ligament, both of them gone. So I was in a fair bad state, like in, going up to receive the cup. I remember like being kind of helped up along the way, and then majorly then that time when the crowd kind of came in on the field, I couldn't come back down onto the field, so the guards and the security brought me down the back exit and into the dressing room. And funnily enough, I've been captain, which probably captain nearly always ends up nearly being last in the dressing room normally when the crowd is on the field. But it's funny, I ended up in the dressing room nearly first, and who was in there before me? Only Teddy McCarthy had raced in. Probably Teddy doesn't like hearing the speeches, so he left early and went into the dressing room. And of course, the icon of Cork and really respected man Jack Lynch was there. So it was a brilliant moment there with the three of us, like we were just there in the dressing room. But yeah, I was lucky because Dr. Con Murphy kind of straight away wrapped me up in a kind of a heavy bandage, and it kind of I was able to stabilise. I was able to get around it a little bit better. But unfortunately, then I ended up in Tralee General Hospital on Wednesday and was there for nearly 3 weeks.
Right. Jesus, so, I didn't realise it was so bad that the tear had been so significant.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, I suppose Meath kept me going. I think the team was so motivated that day to win that it didn't matter what happened to any player,
Yeah, that's a phenomenal story. We also have Ger Fitzgerald with us from the Hurlers. Ger, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you keeping?
I'm very well. How are you getting on?
Very good, thank you.
We've just been strolling down memory lane with Larry Tompkins there. It must have been an interesting couple of weeks for you in the build-up to this as well, 30-year anniversary. A remarkable achievement when you think about it, the fact that no one's done it since, and no one's really been, Galway had an opportunity for it, but no one's really been within a hair's breadth of it since.
Oh, absolutely, a remarkable opportunity, and it's, I suppose, in the modern game now, it's very, very, very difficult for players to play like Teddy did on both teams, but also for counties to be successful in both codes is very, very serious, and there's not too many competing at the top table on both codes anymore.
What's your recollection of the actual day itself?
The hurling day was, I suppose, we'd been experiencing the build-up from 1986. A lot of us had the core of that team had been around, so we were familiar with the drill. There was a bit of tension around All-Ireland final day, as you'd normally expect. But I think overall the team was very relaxed. We were pretty confident in our own ability. We had played very well against Galway a couple of years earlier, and having beaten Tipperary in the Munster final, there was enormous confidence running through the team. And the Canon and John McCarthy had us physically and mentally in a very good state facing into the match.
What was Gerald McCarthy's role?
Well, he was officially he was the team trainer, but basically he was a tactician and he was the sounding board for the Canon. He had a massive role really, and I think he reinforced the Canon's beliefs all through the year in terms of when the Canon would come up with an idea. The first man he'd bounce it off would be Gerald, and then Gerald would sort of sell it to the team. But Gerald had a huge role in terms of background work and physical work, and we were in very, very good physical condition going into that final.
Okay, so it was definitely a management duo, because I don't know if many people outside the county would have been familiar with the Canon in advance of that year. Certainly, we had quite high-profile managers of both Tipperary and Galway at the time in Babs and Cyril, and they would have been the great rivalry. And I don't remember who the Cork manager was up until that point, and then all of a sudden, the Canon sneaks in and takes one, as somebody said in one of those great Laker Gales.
Yeah, well, he'd been involved with Cork in 1984 and 85, so he had been around it. He had Justin McCarthy with him, but he came in again in 1990, and he had Gerald as his support act really, and the physical trainer in an official capacity. But I think he gave him a lot of support. But Canon had a serious experience with UCC, and he was a great man to work one-to-one with players, working their minds, working on their sort of approach to things. And he was a little bit of a joker as well. He took a little bit of tension out of the atmosphere, and but he was a great man in the dressing room.
What's the scene at half-time? Because whatever about your confidence pre-match, the first 35 minutes is one of the greatest exhibitions of hurling we've ever seen from Joe Cooney. Like, absolutely sensational, godlike, kind of, the greatest Michael Jordan-style performance. And Galway hurled themselves out, it turns out, in retrospect, and you guys came into the game in the second half. But certainly at half-time, it's like, whoa, that guy out there is unstoppable.
Well, we had a decent enough start, and then they sort of took control, but the wind had an enormous effect on that game. I suppose it was more evident in the second half in our experience, but Joe Cooney was on fire. But at the same time, I didn't feel we didn't feel we were hurling that bad, and the wind was going to have an enormous effect. Obviously, there was a little bit of a G up and a bit of tension and a few harsh words spoken at half-time, but there wasn't overall panic. I think we had confidence in our own ability. We had, after all, beaten Tipperary in the Munster final, which was really a great monkey to get off our backs, and we were pretty confident. And we had, in 1986, turned Galway over in sort of similar circumstances, playing in the same direction. So I think once we got out the second half, we got stuck into the match, and Jim Cashman, to his eternal credit, settled down and had a tremendous second half. And also, I think it was a reflection of the management's confidence that they didn't move Jim off of a Joe Cooney. That was a very significant move at halftime, and there was talk about it, but it was decided not to do it. And I think that was a significant moment in that we kept our shape and we kept our positions. And in the second half, the wind had a significant impact in where Joe Cunningham's puck outs were landing. And the key thing about that then was that the famed, we'll say, Galway half-back line were great men facing the ball, but when you turned them and made them run at their own goals, that was their Achilles heel, really. And we felt that if we could get them turning, we could get the scores. And I suppose another significant factor in that forward line, 5 of the 6 forwards there, and Tony Sullivan won't thank me, but he wouldn't have been a noted goal scorer. But the other 5 of those 6 forwards were all noted goal scorers and well able to put the ball away when they got opportunities. And
so you did. 5 goals was the winning of the game.
5 goals, and probably missed 2 or 3 more, so that was significant, I think.
It is an all-time classic. It probably needs to be excavated and put on TG Carr a bit more often, but it is an all-time classic All-Ireland final. Does it help when you're remembering those games that it is, like, I'm sure it doesn't matter if you'd won a scratchy game, a point to no score, but actually, when you're telling the stories, it's like, this, by the way, everybody, this was an all-time classic, just so you're aware.
Yeah, I suppose it helps with the nostalgia, and it was brilliant over the lockdown when people were very restricted in where they could go, and the games were on TV. There was a great bit of banter around home, bit of banter around the clubs, and bit of banter between the lads on the team having a bit of crack on it. I didn't realise you were that good or that bad, It was pretty interesting, all right. But it goes down as a classic. But really, when you win in All-Ireland, 1 point or 20 points wouldn't matter. The key there is the result. It's all about the winning. Nobody thinks of the losers really after that. It's a brutal experience. We've won them and we've lost them. But when you certainly win them, it wouldn't matter whether you won by 20 points or 1 point. The significance of it is still the same. The fact that it's a classic is excellent, and I suppose the fact that it's been used this today now to fundraise for Marymount, which is a tremendous cause for Cork and a huge institution in its own right in Cork, and a massive service to people who are very sick when they need to go to Marymount. So it's a huge occasion and a very proud thing for us to be associated with.
Jared, when you think back on the start in 1990, obviously the footballers were reigning All-Ireland champions. How far did the hurlers come from? Were you in the mix that year? Did you?
In 1989, there was a lot of upheaval. There was a lot of changes in the panel. 3 or 4 of us hadn't played in the championship, haven't been involved in the league. The footballers had a very successful setup going, and I suppose we were looking on in envy, really, having previously had a good run ourselves in 86. We thought we should be still up there, but Tipperary were dominating, and we had management changes at the start of 1989. Or at the end of 1989, coming into the 1990 season, and we worked very hard in the league. We had a very successful league campaign, albeit it ended pretty hairy in Wexford Park on an Easter Monday. I think we were beaten by Wexford in a poor display, with 5 of those lads who played that forward line played in the All-Ireland final. So we were in a pretty good place physically, and we knew we could hurl. We knew we had a decent enough team. The Munster Championship was tricky for us. We had a hairy start against Kerry. We had a few injuries going into that match. We built up momentum as we went. I think a very significant victory for us was the game against Waterford and Thurles. Previously, Waterford had beaten Cork in '89 after a replay, and we put in a very good display that day. We were missing Teddy Tomas and Tony Sullivan in that match, so a lot of lads who came in from sort of minor and under 21 from 85, 86, 88 under 21s gelled in with the more senior lads from 86, and we formed a very, very formidable team as the season developed.
Okay. Jared, do you have a question?
Yeah, Larry, I wanted to ask you about what it was like being a superstar in Cork in 1990, because there was a young lad shooting the lights out for Nottingham Forest at that stage, on the verge of his move to Manchester United, who I understand was in picking your brains from time to time.
I was trying to learn a bit from him. But look, I've met great people over a long period of time, and the GA is fantastic. I was here one night, just give an example with Roy Keane, and I was saying to him, geez, this is I suppose only 6 months ago, and I just said, look, Roy, I said, you've won everything in the game, geez, you couldn't have asked for better. And Jared laughed at this. He turned around to me and he said, I didn't win an All-Ireland hurling. So he was just making the comparison, like that you're not really accepted in Cork unless you win an All-Ireland hurling title. So I still have that one to go as well. But the most important thing for us, and Jared said the same, we were the lucky ones when you're out there and get the opportunity to play for your county. And Cork is so special, like it's just a brilliant place, and to produce so many sports people in all walks of life, and just to get the honour to go out there and represent your county and try and do your best. Like, there's loads of people that just can't do it, or they're just, whether they just didn't make the county scene and they missed out, or they would love to be there. And of course then, Jared's talked about the people then that probably just unwell, and just things that happened to them over the years, and that's why it's a magic day today in relation to Go Red today. And look, we're all in some way touched by the magnificent work that Marymount do outside there. And look, I just want to say to everybody, try and just contribute something, and it would be just a massive help to the charity. And just go red today, and just dig deep, and you'll certainly feel good about yourself. Lads, great stuff. Ger Fitzgerald and Larry Tompkins, thanks very much for joining us. They're great stories from 1990. And again, the place to donate is idonate.ie/Go Red for Cork, and this is to raise funds for Marymount Hospice. It's the brainchild of current Cork GAA hurler Conor Cahalane, whose dad Niall obviously was famously part of that 1990 football team, a man mountain himself, a worthy teammate of Larry Tompkins, and a worthy adversary for that great Meath team as well. Coming up on OTB AM this morning, we're going to hear still from Gary Breen. We're going to preview the US Open Golf, which gets underway in Winged Foot, and we're bringing you part 2 of our interview with Bernard Brogan about his new book, where we talk about Jim Gavin. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning. With all the breaking stories, post-match reaction.
It is a loss, there's no question. We're going to have to adapt as best we can.
And the best bits from off the ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
I tried to view the lockdown as I tried to see a silver lining and say this is my opportunity to work on my weaknesses.
The OTB Brief. Weekday mornings from 7:20 a.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the OTB Sports app.
The all-new OTB Sports app. It's all videos, sports news, live scores, interviews, podcasts, all waiting for you. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download now.
Football is back.
Ball to Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app, live updates and analysis of Premier League action. The OTB Sports app, live score updates straight to your phone.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
5 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM, and a reminder, Off the Ball is the only place to hear live and exclusive commentary from the Premier League and Heineken Champions Cup. We're going to be on air at the earlier time of 12:30 on Sunday with full commentary of Ulster's Champions Cup clash with Toulouse, commentary from Neil Tracy and Johnny Murphy. Then at 4:30 it's Chelsea against Liverpool with Nathan Murphy and Kenny Cunningham. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Very excited to tell you that Just Eat have launched the Euro Football Quiz, which is going to test Irish football fans' knowledge on the European Championships, giving you the chance to win cool prizes or bragging rights over friends. You can compete nationally to win the grand prize of 4 tickets to the Euros next year in Dublin, and you can also take part in a specially created OTB Sports Mini League, for which you can win 2 tickets to the Euros in Dublin alongside Just Eat vouchers and an official Euro 2020 football. Go to justeat.ie/campaign/Euro Football Quiz to sign up and test your Euros football knowledge, and check out our interview with David Myler on his favourite memories of the Euros as both a player and a fan, which will go live on otbsports.com later on today, and you'll also find sign-up details in that article to the OTB Football Leaderboard, so you don't need to remember the full URL there if you wanted to check that out. Now, 6 minutes past 9, we want to turn to one of the big stories of the week in football in England at the moment. Gary Breen, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Joe.
You're not
great.
You're not on Twitter, it turns out.
No, I'm not on any of social media stuff, to be perfectly honest, and I don't think that's a bad thing at the moment. But I just want to take this opportunity to clarify what I'd actually said about Shane Duffy's move to Celtic. I'm glad you guys have given me the opportunity, because I think it's been grossly misinterpreted. There's been accusations I've been disrespectful to the Scottish League. That's the last thing I'd want to do. Even disrespectful to Celtic. I mean, it just doesn't add up in terms of that. And so I've been very frustrated about it. I think the story has snowballed. I wasn't aware how much it had done until one of my mates, a good friend of mine, well, one of my best friends growing up in London, who's from Glasgow, his family, massive Celtic fans, and he even threw me a text to say, listen, you've upset a lot of Celtic fans. And so I look back on everything, on my comments and stuff like that in terms of what I said, and I think that I do believe it's been misinterpreted in terms of what I was trying to say. Maybe I need to be tighter in what I'm saying, but I think arms and legs have been added to it. That's what my frustration has certainly been. I think there's a rhetoric around what I was talking about, but not necessarily what I said. And certainly even some of your colleagues, you know, lads I've worked with for a long time, have put a spin on it that doesn't really reflect what I said. The likes of Nathan, when talking to Kenny Cunningham yesterday, said that Shane Duffy has put his Ireland place under threat. I've never said that. I don't ever believe that this move would do that. I don't believe that Shane Duffy's place in the Ireland team is under threat, such as his performances since he burst onto the scene for the Euros back in 2016. I think it's a brilliant move for him to Celtic. I genuinely do. I heard Will asking Gordon Strachan and saying that Gary believes it's a mistake that he's gone to the Scottish Premier League. I never said that. That's not what I said. And even in the print on your website today, it says that, I just attributed to Kieran Bradley saying that I believe it's a step down for Shane. I've never said that. And this is the problem that I've had. I'll own whatever I say, my comments, of course I will. And if they're not designed to be a shock tactic in terms of like what Chris Sutton might be as such, I'm not that type of co-commentator. I hope I'm not anyway. I aspire not to be that. But I just think it's got arms and legs. There's a suggestion that, you know, even Lenny has said in his press conference, where he doesn't need to be answering these type of questions. He's got nothings on his plate that ultimately he's referencing people who've gone up to Scotland and past and made great careers. I know that. I'm fully aware of that. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I know about the iconic centre forwards that have been at Celtic because I've played against most of them. The likes of Van Hooijdonk, Di Canio, Viduka, Chris Sutton himself, John Hartson.
A long time ago. That's all a long time ago.
Exactly. And Henrik Larsson. You were talking about iconic centre forwards. But this was my point, I think. And you're right, Joe. I even heard you speaking with Owen yesterday to John Hartson, where you were quite right to say, listen, in terms of the standard now, I stick by the fact that my comment should have included Edouard. Of course, I thought that people would understand that Shane's not going to be playing against Edouard. I know he's a fabulous centre forward. That's pretty obvious. And of course, Gillette as well at Celtic is a player who's more than capable of playing in the Premier League. And I think Rangers fans will then argue about Morales. I think he's talented as a goal scorer, yes, certainly. But I think that the problems that they're having in terms of how often he gets sent off, that type of things, the issues you've got to deal with that way would frighten off some Premier League clubs. And of course, when I actually said the comment on Saturday, as soon as I said it, and I thought, I forgot about Kemar Roof. Because, of course, in terms of what he's done at Leeds, comes from Anderlecht. When the Rangers actually got him for that sign, I thought that's a good sign and that could be a threat to Celtic. But this is the problem, Jay. It's just I just feel that it's not, people have not took into account what I've said. It's now been billed that I've been disrespectful to the Scottish Premier League, which I wouldn't be for one moment. I genuinely wouldn't be. I know the challenges of playing for Celtic in terms of the demands. Of course I do. And it was great that Gordon Strachan said that, because I would have been party to being around Gordon Strachan over the years, and it really resonated with me in terms of him saying about the challenges he had being a manager of Coventry and Southampton in the Premier League, where you've got to design a team and not to lose games, and then suddenly the intensity of going to a club like Celtic where you've got to design a team where you have to win. I'm fully aware of the intensity that playing for Celtic means, is because at times 2-0's not enough. Has to be 3, has to be 4, because of the demands, because of what such an iconic football club it is. And for people now to say to me, well, listen, you're not understanding what it means for Shane Duffy to pull on the Celtic jersey, complete nonsense. Of course I understand it.
Yeah,
it'd be a dream. It'd be a quick dream come true for him.
I think you said all that, though, to be honest. It was Chris Sutton who essentially started this by saying in his tweets, I just want to read it to you, idiotic attack on the Scottish game by Gary Breen, suggesting Shane Duffy's Ireland place may be under threat because he plays in Scotland. It's been good enough for the likes of Larson, Van Dijk, etc. Your thoughts on 606? That was, so obviously he was punting for comments pre-show, and I think that it probably will be a little bit of a step down, where week in, week out you're facing we were having this conversation earlier in the week, and I was making the point, for fantasy football, when you're going through the teams, every single Premier League team has a hotshot striker. Unconnected to your comments, right? It's largely true. Some teams are still hunting around to try and find them, particularly at the bottom of the table, but most teams have somebody who is earning 150 grand a week or 120 grand a week because they're absolutely sensational strikers. It's fair to say that it will be a bit of a step down, I think, for Shane Duffy in the SPL. That might be good for him, that might be bad for him. We'll have to wait and see. People pointing out that he had a great game in his first game. It was a 5-0 win. But Jay, I know you're saying about, I don't believe it is a step down because of how unique playing for Celtic is for any of the Irish lads. I don't believe it is a step down in that. And of course, the comparison then will be between Brighton and Celtic. Listen, Celtic's an iconic club. It is a world-famous club. And I would have loved the opportunity to play at Parkhead. I was due, actually, to play in Jackie McNamara's testimonial, but I got injured playing for Sunderland last day of the season, so I missed out, and I always regretted that. But even if you talk about the iconic world players, the greatest players of all time, the likes of Messi, everyone wants to tick off that box to play at Parkhead. So I understand. Look, I genuinely understand all that. Yeah. But I'm not saying about it's a step down in that. My point exactly is that the centre forwards that he will be playing against are not of the quality that he's had before. That's not to say that it's not going to be a challenge that he's going to walk around with a cigar in, because I don't believe that for one moment. That would be disrespectful to the Scottish Premier League, which I haven't been. That would be disrespectful even to the likes of Derek McInnes, a manager of Aberdeen, Jack Ross at Hibs, who were fighting that battle to break that old firm monopoly, as if I so dismissively said Scottish football is not any good. I don't believe that for one moment, because there's players coming down, the likes of Tierney from Celtic, been brilliant for Arsenal. Robertson, of course, at Liverpool. You know what I mean? And then, of course, McGinn at Villa as well has been incredible for them. Then there's a flip side of that, even like the likes of Billy Gilmour coming in as a centre midfielder for Chelsea from Scotland. So, I've had too many opinions attributed to what I said, but I didn't say them. Okay, fair enough. Go on, Tommy.
Gary, can I ask you a quick one? And it's just to curve what you were saying on Saturday, that the quality of player that Duffy's up against now is going to be a big concern for Ireland. Yeah. Can you talk a bit more about why that'll be a concern for Ireland?
Yeah, and that's not to suggest that, and that's another rhetoric there, Tommy, that was coming out, is that in going to Celtic, it's going to be a problem that he won't play for Ireland. It's a nonsense. I should have been more specific in what I said in that. say, for example, and Kenny touched on it yesterday. When I was in the Premier League, I played there for 5 years, then in the Championship when I got relegated with Coventry. And then when you come back to the Premier League, you're not as sharp. You're not, because of the very fact you just said, you're playing against top-class centre-forwards who are moving you around all the time. I'm not saying it's not going to be a challenge for Shane in Celtic, because it will be. But that are the little differences that, if you think about how he's had to defend, a lot of the times it will be in and around his box, really sharp movement. Even if you look at that Chelsea game against Brighton, he would have, Ben White played instead of him as he's gone up to Celtic, but he'd have been up against Timo Werner, that type of attacking, that quality centre forward there, where if you just take your eye off the ball, the players in midfield can put it through an eye of a needle. That was my point. I do not believe that the quality in the Scottish Premier will be giving him those type of challenges. I understand fully the challenge he will have in terms of this iconic season. I think it's going to be a great move for him. I genuinely do, but I don't need anyone to explain to me what it means to play for Celtic and what I obviously think it will mean to Shane to play for Celtic.
Yeah, look, the only thing is that people comparing Brighton with Celtic are actually getting it wrong, because it's not about
not the clubs.
Exactly. Yeah. The point is, it's who you're playing against. So when you're at Brighton, you're playing against Man United and Liverpool. When you're at Celtic, you're playing against Ross County, and that's the difference. So that it's a false comparison to go, oh, of course it's a bigger club. Fair enough. People can have their views on that, and happy to tease those out with anybody. But look, I think in the long run, it's going to be up to him to learn more about what it's like to be playing with the ball. That exact point you made about Gordon Strachan. All of a sudden, the responsibility on him to be a creative force as opposed to just a defender is going to be far greater, and let's see how he deals with it.
Yeah, and I think he will do it, because I've never felt that Shane never shies away from having the ball. And we were talking about breaking it down, and it's great, Tommy, you're asking me to really explain my comments, and hopefully I have done in terms of that, with no disrespect intended, just a fact. I believe that. I do genuinely believe, and everyone who disagrees with that in terms of what I've said, that's fine. I'll take that. You know, I've had enough criticism as a player and as a pundit or as a commentator. That's fine. I'll be critiqued for what I said, no problem, but for not for what I haven't said. But I agree. I think the challenges at Celtic will be different for him. It was fascinating to listen to Gordon Strachan. I speak to Gordon over the years. Obviously, he's my manager. And now his son is the first team coach as well. He's a very good friend of mine. And I do understand the intensity. I haven't played in it. We only wish it's one of those things we could have played in Old Firm Derby. But I do understand that challenge. There's no doubt about that. That'll be ferocious. And if you think about those European nights, if Shane gets to play in one of them when all the crowds come back, when everyone's healthy again, hopefully, you know, it looks a brilliant move. It genuinely does. But in terms of dissecting this particular season, he's there for one season on loan. My statement was he will not be playing against centre forwards of similar quality.
Were you surprised by the level of outrage at your comments? I felt like I felt like you touched a nerve. I got to say, I think that there was a lot of defence of this.
Yeah, no, it's touched a nerve with me, and not because of I won't own up to what I said, because I will own what I said. I won't back down in terms of the comparison between the quality of centre forward he'll face. But I didn't like the injustice of people jumping on the bandwagon and saying that I've done this. John Artson saying I'm giving Scottish football a kick in. It was interesting. You asked John Artson, well, who are the other players? Who are the centre forwards then who can play in the Premier League? And he didn't want to name them because he works for Sky. I didn't want to do it. Did you hear his quote? Well, I work for Sky, so I don't really want to name them. Incredible. But I just feel that it was something that just left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, and I just wanted to get the opportunity to set the record straight in terms of what I said. I believe that it's going to be an iconic season. It really is. I said that initially. I think he's going to be a legend up there, Shane Duffy. I do.
He's going to score double-digit goals was the start of the quote.
I believe that. That's not a flippant comment to say that he can just walk through the defenders up there. The angle on that for me is he's so dominant.
Yeah.
And I know that like the likes of Gavin Strachan, who I've seen working in terms of set pieces as a coach, we worked together at Peterborough. Brilliant coach, he really is. And people talked about Damien Duff leaving, which was something that concerned Celtic fans in terms of the reputation that Damien Duff's got. But as soon as I knew that Gavin was going there, I felt Celtic fans could rest easy. This guy's a brilliant coach. He really is. Goes under the radar. It's very different to his dad in terms of not the same type of personality, but a brilliant coach. Would have done a lot of the set pieces. So in my mind, I'm thinking, right, Gavin's going to be doing the set pieces. Shane Duffy is like a runaway train trying to stop. We've seen that with Ireland. I do. I believe he can get double figures. I genuinely believe that. And that is not being disrespectful to the lads who will be marking him, because I don't think I'd be able to stop him when he gets a running jump.
I'm surprised Chris Sutton's producer didn't give you a call to come on 6:06 on Sunday night or Saturday night, whenever that was.
Well, no, because even what Lenny said, the reason, Lenny was right in terms of what he said in his press conference. And, again, the last thing he needs to be asking questions about what I've said. But he said, I don't know the Scottish League. I don't. And I admittedly would hold my hands up and say I don't know it in depth. I just know about Premier League teams who are scouting what centre forwards they're potentially looking at. And my point was being that not many would be looking at any in the Scottish Premier League at the moment. Obviously, Edouard, we know he's highly thought of. He looks like he's going to be a brilliant striker. Has been a brilliant fighter for Celtic. The hope, and fingers crossed, don't want to upset Celtic fans again, is that he doesn't leave and that he does stay in this iconic season. But, Joe, just on that, the reason I asked to come back on and to clarify this is because I had something similar at the beginning of lockdown where I was misquoted in print on the Off the Ball website where it said that I can't find that. No, this was about Stephen Kenny, that I had said that he'd failed everywhere. I had said, listen, he has failed elsewhere, but it said he's failed everywhere. And then suddenly James McLean, which I love about James, to be perfectly honest, that he's so protective of the people around him, came on, left a bit on me saying, I don't know the Irish League. What is he talking about? He hasn't failed everywhere. He's been a success at Dundalk. Of course I know he's been a success at Dundalk, but I didn't deal with that. I just kind of let that go. Listen, that's one of those things, but I wasn't letting this one go.
Okay, I don't remember the first one, and if we misquoted you, if someone misquoted you, then you have, I apologise for that, because that shouldn't happen. With this one, I think the nerve that you struck was with the self-confidence of people who are involved in Scottish football and who actually don't fully appreciate the fact that the Scottish League is nowhere near as good as it was. And has the point about bringing up Laudrup and Van Hooijdonk and De Canio and all those great players is that's never going to happen again. It's like bringing up that great Scottish international football team in the late 70s and 80s. That period of time is gone.
And of course, Jay, like I said, I don't know Scottish football, but I'm able to realise that the reason why those great players, in terms of how often they would be going up to the Scottish Premier League from the English Premier League, is because of the financial muscle that they had then. Now, I'm fully aware of the battle that the Scottish Premier League has at the moment in terms of they cannot replicate the money that is in the English Premier League in terms of TV revenue. Some of the best leagues in Europe can't. That's why they're desperately trying to get hold of that revenue that the English leagues. And of course, the problems will be compounded by the fact that there's no supporters coming in, and that's a lot of their revenue. So I'm fully aware of all that. That's why the last thing I'd want to be seen to be doing is being flippant comments that are disrespectful to people up there that I've not. If I believed it and I said it, I'd own it. I would. But I haven't said none of the stuff that's been attributed to me.
Can I just go back to the James McLean one? Because I've done a quick Google here, and what it says on our side is everyone keeps talking about Dundalk, but he has failed elsewhere. It was James McLean who misquoted us, misquoting you. No, but
I read on your the in print where you'd done it. It did say everywhere, so I assumed then that James has read that.
I can't find that anywhere. But anyway, okay, we'll do a bit of dig on that just to try and get to the bottom of that.
Listen, we don't need to go, crikey, I'm trying to write about 8 wrongs. We'll be all day if I'm trying to write all my wrongs in my career.
Okay.
All day, all year, I should say.
Well, there you go. Look,
can I ask one quick one just before we finish up? And it's just on that point about Shane Duffy and his form and the forwards he'd be facing in the Scottish Premier League. Yeah. Is there anyone in the Premier League, and I'm talking maybe a little bit about Darragh O'Shea, who's got to start at the weekend, is there any of the young Irish centre-backs who can step up now and put their hand up and say, look who I'm playing against?
Oh, yeah, no, what Tommy is in a direct to put Shane Duffy's Ireland place under jeopardy.
Under pressure.
No, listen, I hope there are in terms of what he's doing at West Brom, of course, and then at Blackburn as well, in a way that John Egan has done that. Because everyone's now saying about, well, John's been underused for so many years. But the reality was John was at Gillingham in League One, then Brentford. It's a very big jump to what he is now, which is an outstanding centre-half in the Premier League. No, and I'll tell you why, Tom. I do believe that those other centre-halves that should be their mindset. They should be thinking, I'm going to try and attack Duffy's place, John Egan's place. That should be the mindset. Would have been mine as a young centre-half. Certainly was mine as an old centre-half for Ireland when the likes of Dunny's coming through, John O'Shea, quality players. That's how it should be. We want that level of competition. But I genuinely believe this, that what Shane Duffy has done for Ireland since he burst onto the scene just before the Euros in these 4 years cements his place in the Ireland team, because you only have to look at his performance. He has been immense. Now, everyone's talking about the differences in the system. He's going to play a high line. I said in this interview that no one's really said he can cope with it. Of course he can. He's done it in the Premier League. I've no doubt about that. But I do believe he's going to be a massive success. I don't believe just because he's not facing brilliant centre forwards that suddenly he's placed in the Ireland teams. I don't believe that for one moment. In fact, I agree with Lenny. I think it's going to make him even more bullish in terms of how confident he's going to be. I think he's a confident lad anyway, and he should be because of his performances. But I think playing and pulling that jersey on, in terms of what it means for him personally, not just what it means for every young Irish lad growing up. My dream wasn't to play for Celtic, but because my dream was Ireland. But I understand that Shane's was Celtic. Now imagine doing that at a time when he's lost his father, what it meant to him. I want it to be so positive, and it will be positive. I think he's going to be an absolute legend up there. I genuinely do.
For what it's worth, I don't think you should ever shy away from having strong opinions about stuff. And
I do. I don't, Joe. I hope I don't. But they've got to be my opinions. They can't be people putting words in my mouth.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I don't think we put words in your mouth. I think that mostly on our side, I know that the lads all are busy feverishly texting you there in the back. That's not what I meant. But anyway, we can take that one offline. I hope that you've clarified, and we've given you the forum to clarify this morning.
Yeah, you're great. You're great. Obviously, I spoke to Owen yesterday, giving me the opportunity today, and I thank you for it. But I just I just felt that there was a tone attached to it that I've been disrespectful, and that would be the last of what I'd want to do, to be perfectly honest.
Gary Breen, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, lads. Good luck.
It's Gary Breen there. Maybe putting a tin hat on the conversation about the situation in Scotland. And if you've got views on this, which I'm sure you have, 087 9180 180 is the number. John Duggan's Virtual Insanity US Open tips piece is live now on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com. And he is with us right now because it's time for Virtual Insanity.
Yeah, good morning, Ger and Tommy. I just want to say before we start this, deepest sympathies with the family and friends of Pat Smullen. Just very, very sad news, and great jockey and a great man. And it was very tough to read that last night and this morning. I think the outpouring of grief and emotion, obviously you heard from Johnny Murtagh and Johnny Ward earlier on, was fitting for such an ambassador. That Cancer Trials Day, which actually was a year to the day that Pat died, was one of the best things I've ever seen.
I didn't realise it was the first anniversary of that, was it?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Yesterday. So one of the best things I've ever seen. 2.5 million raised, complete selflessness. It's just very sad.
Well, hopefully that race will become an annual fixture where the greatest jockeys in the world come out of retirement for one last spin, as long as they're safe and able to do so. It'll be a great testimony, and it'll be something that maybe they can look to do next year when we have crowds back as well. So, all right. Obviously, we'll be reflecting on an incredible career on and off the track over the course of the rest of the day on otbsports.com as well. John, it's golf week, it's golf major week. It's slightly under the radar in terms of
US Open. Yeah.
Most of the build-up, it feels like it's been a little bit low-key this week.
It has been, I think, because of just the strange times we're in. The season finished, and then the season, started again last week, even though it's September, and now we got a US Open without crowds, which was meant to be in June. The Open Championship at Royal St George's was cancelled, and now Winged Foot has just kind of crept up on us, Ger and Tommy, and doesn't mean it's going to be any less exciting. This course is an absolute monster. Winged Foot, just to the north of New York City, has hosted 5 US Opens before and a PGA Championship. The last time I hosted the US Open, 2006, Phil Mickelson and Colin Montgomery self-destructed on the last hole. Both took double bogeys. Jeff Ogilvy won with a total of 5 over par. In 1974, Hale Irwin won with 7 over par. Billy Casper, 1959, won with 2 over par and would lay up on a par 3 every day and make par on it. It's just an absolutely brutal course. Not many trees or water around the course because it doesn't need it. It's got 6-inch rough. It's very long. The greens are, small, extremely undulating, bamboozling contours. You've got to be very precise with your approaches. Actually, you need all facets of your game to be working. And I just think what I kind of felt from watching the PGA last month with Colin Morikawa and Harding Park and the really bunched leaderboard, you didn't really need the fans to make it an enthralling viewing experience for a TV viewer. And I think the US Open this week will be the same. 4 Irish in the field: Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Graham McDowell, James Sugru, the amateur. And I just can't wait. Absolutely can't wait for it to get going at 11:50 tomorrow morning.
Okay, so the point of this is to try and guide us to make a little bit of profit.
And last week Doc Reblin placed at 35-1. The week before we'd nothing. The week before that Jason Kokrak placed at 70-1. So I think I'm thereabouts. I've picked 4 golfers. The first one is Jon Rahm from Spain. I think he's my headline tip, and I think he's got a great chance of winning this week. He's 10-1. A lot of bookmakers going 9, 10, 11 places. Jon Rahm, metaphorically, not literally, my barroom brawler friend from Spain. And I just think this guy, number 2 in the world, has got everything. He's a brilliant driver of the golf ball. He shot 10 under par at Olympia Fields, a very difficult course, a former US Open course, in that BMW Championship, which he then held that amazing putt to beat Dustin Johnson there only a few weeks ago. He won the Memorial Tournament earlier on this year. I think he's in excellent form. He's, as I said, a great driver. He's got a good short game. He's got a good form at Augusta, which is one of the hardest places you need to have a great short game. I think he's a born winner. He's a guy who went to Arizona and started learning English through hip-hop, which kind of showed his kind of determination to adapt to a new life in America. He's come through. He's won an Irish Open, as we know, a couple of times. And I just think he's a winner. Jon Rahm, I think he's a rock-solid each-way bet. He's a multiple major winner, and I think this could be the breakthrough week for Jon Rahm at 10-1. The second guy I'm picking for this week, a field over 150. The second guy I'm picking is Patrick Cantlay, 25-1 for Patrick. Patrick Cantlay was, like Jon Rahm, the top amateur golfer in the world. Then he lost his best friend, who was killed in a car accident. Was knocked down very, very tragically, and then he had real back problems for many years. So he went kind of off the radar for a few years, but then battled back to get on the tour. And then last year, nearly won the Masters, finished like a train, was third at the PGA at Bethpage Black, which is a course designed by A.W. Tillinghast, who also designed Winged Foot, and then won the Memorial Tournament at Jack Nicklaus's course at 64. 12th in the world. I think he's a very, very solid golfer, a very talented player. A little bit out with his irons recently, but that's factored into the 25-1. But he's under the radar by Patrick Cantlay, and I think Patrick Cantlay, the second selection, has got a good chance. Third up is Jason Day, the Australian PGA champion of 2015. Nearly won the PGA Championship at Harding Park this year. Played really, really well. Scrambled brilliantly, which you'll need to do at Winged Foot. Had a run of 4 top 10s in US Opens between 2013 and 2016. Has split with his longtime coach and mentor, Carl Swatton, but sometimes a change can be good. And I think Jason Day, who's now healthy, had a lot of ailments, can definitely contend. I think he's a very talented golfer once again, who nearly won the Masters as a rookie, remember, Jason Day. And I think at, 35-1, Jason Day, I definitely think is an each-way bet.
Dave McIntyre loves an old first-round leader bet because there's an immediacy to it.
Yeah,
gives you a little bit of interest for the evening. Is that a good first round? Is he a good first round?
Jason Day?
Yeah.
Possibly. I think with first round leader bet, sometimes what I would try and do is pick a complete outsider, or sometimes a veteran.
Fred Couples, obviously.
Yeah, or Haler, when I remember was leading one US Open. So you could pick a guy in his 40s, like Phil, for example.
Somebody who can't see it over the whole 4 days.
Phil at 50 years of age is not going to do it for 4 days of the US Open, but he could shoot 67 in the first round, and everybody's like cheering for Phil. And Monty shot in 2006, shot the first round lead. Rory McIlroy, who's now, there's this golf theory called the nappy factor. When a golfer gives birth, they tend to play better. And now he's got his daughter, Poppy, that Rory will have maybe that kind of freedom, and he won't be worrying about, his work as much. So Rory McIlroy, 16-1. He's a guy, if he's going to win a major, I think he needs to get off to a fast start. He's been talking about that in his press conference yesterday. So Rory McIlroy for first round leader might not be a bad bet. He's not on my picks, but wouldn't put anybody off, because you got to have one big hitter, and my big hitter this week is Rahm with Cantlay and Day. And the grinder I'm picking is Matt Wallace, an English guy. who's Porter Carrington's former caddy Dave McNeely on the bag. He's 150 to 1 for 5 each way. Plays well on tough golf courses, 3rd at the PGA last year, finished 12th at the US Open last year, finished 4th at the Memorial Tournament, won the toughest test this year. Not short of confidence, 30 years of age, won 4 times in the European Tour. He's really had to battle through the Challenge Tour, European Tour, to get to where he is now. Matt Wallace, look, he might not win, but he could be at 150 to 1, somebody to finish in the top 10. Last week, Stuart Sink won at the Safeway Open. He was 570 to 1 on Betfair. So don't worry about big prices if you fancy somebody to come through. So Ram is the headline, Cantlay, Day and Wallace all each way, but enjoy it if you're going to have a little euro each way on something.
Virtual Insanity from John Duggan, copyright. It is available every Thursday. Is it available every Thursday or every Wednesday?
Every Thursday.
Every Wednesday, Thursday, depending on what time.
Thursday, yeah.
So the column on Thursdays, I'm going to write about Pat Smullen this week, and on OTB Sports and on the app and Virtual Insanity, because I'm thereabouts, and I'm watching this boringly till 1 o'clock in the morning every Monday night. So if I've got nothing else to do, surely I'll be able to pick a winner between now and Christmas.
Well, we'll be back in every step of the way. That's John Duggan with us this morning on Virtual Insanity. It's 9:35 here this morning. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And as John just said, if you don't have the OTB Sports app, you just search OTB Sports in either app store and you'll be able to get it on both Apple and on Android. Now, it is time for us to get into our final piece of the morning, and that is with Bernard Brogan. So obviously he joined us in studio on Monday to talk about his book. There's been 3 sections of it. We did the Kerry rivalry and the decision to actually open the door a little bit for the first time on what that dressing room was actually like as Dublin marched to 5 in a row. Tomorrow we'll talk about the process by which Pat Gilroy broke him down really and built him back into a footballer. At the start of 2010 he wasn't getting picked to start games for Dublin. By the end of 2010 he was Footballer of the Year, and in 2011 they won their first All-Ireland under Pat Gilroy. But this part is the story of his relationship with Jim Gavin, and also his decision to become an openly commercial GAA player, which there weren't that many people who were actually willing to become the face of brands and willing to put their head above the parapet. So a really interesting section of the book here. That's coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, I want to tell you what's on OTB Sports Radio today. Leaders' Questions with Chris Meyer is at noon, and Stuart Lancaster. OTB Gold today, for the day that's in it, it had to be Joe Malloy in conversation with Pat Smullen. Our Legends interview at 3 o'clock is Packy Bonner. A retro panel on the importance of Club GAA at 4 o'clock, and then OTB Gold, Irish football special. Kevin Kilban meets Shay Given, Niall Quinn and Jason McAteer. So plenty of crack for you coming your way between now and the show tonight from 7 o'clock. But in the meantime, let's bring you this. Bernard Brogan's new book is called The Hill. Enjoy.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Right, I'm delighted to say we're talking with Bernard Brogan about his new book. It's called The Hill, and it's in all good bookshops now. It's really good, and it's the first opportunity we've ever had to see inside the Dublin dressing room from the Jim Gavin era. So that must have been a big enough decision for you to go, I'm going to tell the truth about what happened and reveal what goes on?
Well, what I wanted to do was tell my journey along and my challenges, and also highlight some of the amazing individuals that made my journey so amazing. I obviously wanted to be respectful of the dressing room. That team is still in pursuit of a six in a row, and still in pursuit of All-Irelands, and a lot of them will be around for years to come. So I didn't want to give away anything too major, but I felt it was I could, especially with Jim moving away, and there'd been a total new dressing room, new management.
Did that really help, actually?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I know nothing what's happening in the dressing room now. I don't ask any questions on purpose, because obviously I was writing the book. But
like, one of the final scenes is you sitting down with Jim to tell him you're retiring, and you've no clue at that stage. You're kind of talking to him about what next year is going to be like, and it sounds like he hadn't quite made up his mind at that point. 6 weeks later, he announces, and you're like, whew, I can write everything now.
Yeah, not that you want to be respectful, and that group was successful because of its unity, and it's kept itself to itself. And how much did that mean to the success? Who knows? There's a lot of different variables that drive success, but I wanted to be respectful of that. But I think when you do something special like that, and obviously I was heavily invested in that, and I felt like there was a story there to be told, you know.
And there's a million different stories to be told. Each of the individuals who are there.
Everyone has their own story, you know what I mean. And my one is about challenges. It's an angle into the dressing room, from my point of view, that's probably different to a lot of people's, because in the last couple of years, I only played 5 minutes twice. You know what I mean. So it's not the same mindset or the same environment that maybe a young lad had, like a Conor Callaghan would have, or Kieran Kilkenny or Brian Fenton, that are driving the energy, you know. So mine is a different mindset and a different view, but a view.
Yeah, totally. And I look, that's why we started with the Kerry stuff previously, was because that's the stone on which the sword gets sharpened. It's these defeats where, one, you think you're really close to them, and it's like, oh look, we're really close, and then it's just a buzzsaw, and they cut you off the next time, and all of a sudden you've got to go back to the drawing board. You said something there about our success is a lot of variables. Sport is so random. There's a game where Mayo scored 2 on goals in an All-Ireland final and ends in a draw. Like, you know, when you think back on all the stuff that you did that year as a team and as a group, and all the meetings and the people who came and spoke to you, and the mindfulness and all that stuff, like, it's so random.
Absolutely, yeah, and that says it all. You say it there. And sometimes for that success you need luck, and you need, like Mark talked about, when we got over the line in 2011, we were a different team coming into it, and we were different. If Kerry had won that, we'd be looking back and saying, God, we weren't good enough, we hadn't done this, we hadn't done that. Like, it's easy to applaud the efforts of a team that's successful, but yes, you have to put yourself in the position and have to be prepared to get over the line. But along that journey, there's a lot of different variables. Once you cross the white line, as Jim said, let me see if I can get this right, is the all preparation for war. I won't get this right, but basically, when you cross the white line, all your preparation of war goes out the window, because once you meet the enemy, it's all up in the air, and it's whatever happens, whatever way the ball falls.
No plan survives the first sortie against the enemy.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes,
that's
more eloquently said. Jim won't be happy now with that effort, but
the prodigal son makes an appearance here at just the precise right moment as well. So for people who are kind of unfamiliar with the details, you do your cruciate in February of 2018. So, and get back just for the end of that championship, and decide to come back for 2019. And you're having very robust conversations with Jim Gavin towards the end of the season. At various stages, these conversations feel like this could be the end. It's like there's this kind of, which ratchets up the tension a good bit. But the prodigal son makes an appearance here. I actually love the parable, because it doesn't make any sense to me, right? When you think about the prodigal son, is you can go off and have all the crack, do whatever it is, spend all the family's money. You go and play football in Boston if you want to, and then you come back and there's a party for you and the fatted calf. It's always the people who are left at home. But how does this parable make you? It makes me want to party when I hear that parable, right? That's why
what did it mean for me?
Well, no, I think, like, you were right to be pissed off, weren't you?
Yeah, well, like, here, I as you said, I was fighting with my fingernails to get back into that team in 2018. Did my cruciate, came back in record time. I think I was back on the pitch within 4.5 months. I came on against Roscommon for a couple of minutes, but through a blood sub, just about got on. After five and a bit months, you know, and then didn't see any more action for the rest of the year. I decided to come back and asked that if I come back, I know I'm probably down a pecking order. This team is an amazing team, but I want the opportunity to play if I get myself to the level that I need to be. And throughout the year, I wasn't really getting there, and yeah, I suppose why I was annoyed is that, like, I was working hard, I was there, hadn't gotten a chance, hadn't proved right or wrong my theory or Jim's theory about, I say in the book, the Kerry game in 2017, when I said that 4 balls went over my head, and it was like Jim just decided I'm no longer a starter anymore for this team. I'm just too old, or I'm just...
That's the league final?
Yeah, league final, yeah. Which genuinely, the balls were kicked over my head. You know what I mean? I didn't play well, but it wasn't all my fault. So I was trying to come back. I said to Jim at the start of the year, and Jace and all the management team, I want to be a 50-minute man. I know I'm not going to start for you. I don't have 60, 70 minutes in the tank. I'm going to hone my kick, and I'm going to be, if I get 2 shots, I'm going to score 2 of them. If I get 1 shot, I'll put the ball over the bar. I was building myself for a certain situation, and I just felt...
What did they say to that?
they were like, yeah, I like that. I said, like, you know, you're going to come up against something. We're going to come up against a team. We're not going to have it all our own way. 2018, we kind of got over the line relatively easy. You know what I mean? There was no major stress around it. 2019, I says, this is not going to just fall in your lap. I said, you're going to need some left to centre, some solutions. So that's what I'm hoping to be for you. And that was all positive, and off I went. And then just as the year went on, I just felt I wasn't getting, and I was getting frustrated, and then you're not playing well in training. And
you didn't see any much league time in 2019?
I saw 5 minutes against Cavan, got blocked, and just was like... I came into the game frustrated. I came into the game positive because I was told I was going to get game time. Got 5 minutes, frustrated on the bench before I came on. Then got the nod, warmed up, frustrated, got on. Yeah, and you get blocked and you end up frustrated. So I was literally at the end of the league. I was more or less throwing the hat at it. But I got Gary Keegan, actually, our sports psychologist, just really did a session and just hit me right between the eyes that it's not all about me. It's about the group, it's about self, and it's about what you can add. Can you add to this group? And he wasn't pointed at me, it was a group session, but it just really, as if he was just chatting to me. And I said, right, line in the sand, I said, I'm just going to roll with this. I said, I'm probably not going to play much football, but I'm going to get in and do my best. And I felt I got to a level, and then obviously Dermot came back in, and Jim, I presume, was just wanted to have all of his bullets in his gun coming into an All-Ireland final. And Dermot's one of my good mates. He's here. I played in the wing with him for 10 years, week in, week out, and we worked well together, and we good pals, play golf and drink pints and all that. But and it wasn't about that. It was more about the management not showing respect, or just not showing me the opportunity, and me feeling as in that means that I'm just down another rung on the ladder, that I'm not going to get my chance, which was the case. So
because you talk about respect, and you actually open that kind of worms with Jim, is like you respect me as a man, but you don't respect me as a footballer. And there's a pause, and he's like, well, I do, but you basically were saying he's not showing it to you. By our words.
Yeah, and probably looking back, like I'd say the fundamentals, and I fight my corner and had some robust chats, which Jim always welcomes, because he wants people to show that they care and that they're actually going to go out and get something. So Jim wouldn't want me to apologise for having robust conversations with him. He encourages it, but I definitely feel that looking back, the manager probably just said he's probably just like someone who doesn't play, like number 30 on the pitch. They look at and go, lovely lad, he's on the team, he's there, but he's probably not going to play, and he's just maybe not good enough. And maybe that was, looking back, it's probably the way they felt. You know what I mean? But if I believed that, what was the point of being there? You know what I mean? I didn't believe it. I believed that I could add value, and I could get onto the pitch and help the team.
You were never going to make the decision for them. You were never going to step away and say, I've had enough here.
I think everyone has a right to leave and retire when they want. I wanted to be around. I felt I was good enough to be around. I obviously was coming back from a cruise ship. I said, I'm going to get myself in such nick that I'd be able to add something to this team in a year that there's going to be banana skins along the way. And I fundamentally felt, is this team better with me in the group or without me in the group? And I weighed that it was better to have me there. Being right or wrong, but that was my belief, and that's why I stuck around. And I wasn't going to walk away. Once I kind of got that clarity in my head, that session with Gary Keegan, I was staying around.
And there's loads of examples in the book about the culture of how that actually has an impact, and you can help the person you're marking directly in training who comes and says, well, you know, how did you do that against me? Or talking to Paul Mannion about his game, all that kind of stuff as well, which would suggest that the culture is very healthy. Do you feel like you were held to a different standard from other people, a higher standard, because for any reasons? Like, one, because you'd reached such great heights; two, maybe because you did commercialise your brand at a point when it was not the done thing in GAA. Did you feel that actually was something that ever entered into someone's mind when they were making decisions about the team or whatever?
I would say there was potentially an unconscious bias there. Definitely an unconscious bias. Where there's a conscious bias, I'm not sure, but definitely that. Obviously, I've been around a long time. Jim knew exactly how I could play the ball when I played well, the way I played. When I played bad, what the signs were, as the JO, as the deck, all of the management team. So when I'm going out and trying to prove myself in a match, in a 15v15, if I get onto it, for me, I score 4 points, and that's great, and Burns moving well, and there he is. So that's seen, and this is my view, this is seen by a management, or I would see it as well when I watch my club or watch any match, when somebody does what they're meant to do or plays well. If someone else does something similar down the other end of the park, there's a younger guy clipping 3 or 4 points, you know what I mean?
Get him in and see what he can do in the match.
Like, when you weigh them up, like where do you want to go, and age and been around and all the baggage that goes with being around for a long time and a bit older, and not that I don't think it was ever conscious, I don't think, but definitely it's human nature to feel that way, you know what I mean?
Coaches will view it as like you might be an opportunity blocker. This guy could be the next Bernard Brogan, who the current Bernard Brogan is actually...
I definitely felt that was the case along the journey of the 5 in a row, that like I'm going to empower somebody. I would feel that I'm going to empower a young guy over Bernard, who's mightn't be here next year or could get injured. But as I said to Jim at the start, I said whether that happened or not in the past, where decisions were made because I was a bit older or not, I said this is the year, this is the pinnacle. So if I come back, just if I'm good enough to play, and the young guy is as good as me, and I'm playing a little bit better, you play me. You afford me the same opportunity you would anyone else. And that's the cultural piece that Jim brought into the team, and so that was my view of it.
You talk about the commercialism as well, and how you've been part of a generation who have changed how GAA players are marketed, and how you've taken control of that as much as you possibly can. And like every sport in the world has gone through this. Literally every sport in the world has gone through this. So we're a bit behind the curve in Ireland, and I think anybody calmly and coldly would rationalise that the right thing to do is to do this, is to continue to market the sport and to make as much money from sponsors as we possibly can. And Pat Gilroy had set up a players' trust so that everybody got a taste of it. Did you ever feel, though, that you suffered as a result of that?
I'd say the way people looked at me, I definitely suffered, or their perception of me definitely was viewed in a way due to that. I felt that the GAA is the most grassroots, is the most powerful organisation in this country, and brands and sponsors want to be aligned to it because it has such a value set that the brands and sponsors want to be aligned to. And what better than an amateur sports person who gives his heart and soul to something that is for the good of his community and representing his family and parish. So there's nowhere better in the world for a sponsor to live, or for a brand to be associated with, because it's such a pure sport. And because Dublin were on a certain trajectory, and I was a forward with that team, I was a natural choice for some of these brands. You know what I mean? And I got behind it because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm commercially minded anyway, but I also felt it's the right thing to do. Was that, like, why shouldn't a player who's giving their like the rugby lads down the way get paid a fortune?
Exact same thing, yeah.
They get paid, and they get their.
This is Ireland, brothers. You can't do it.
But, yeah, you're right. As in, people always begrudge that amateur is pure and amateur should be amateur. But like, we're all trying to get after it. They want us to entertain them on our final day, but then they don't want you to reap the rewards of building a brand or going on a journey that a brand might want to partner with you. And yeah, I meet a lot of pushback at times from people, but I think that it's the right thing to do, and I encourage all GA players to get involved, and the GPA has supported those views, and sponsors as well. They want players.
Well, it's exploded since, like, not even since, like that. You know, you weren't the only person doing this. There was loads of people doing it at the time, but it has become a science. Did it ever feed into selection at any point, or was there ever? So 2016 is kind of the King of the Hill appears, and I wonder what that experience for you was like, turning around the corner from Clonleaf onto Jones Road and go, well, that's okay, that's me, and yeah. I'm there.
I trying to find the bus route to keep off the poster off the wall. So that was one of the reasons, or one of the terms and the conditions, was that when the bus was driving down, that they didn't see me saying King of the Hill on it, which is obvious for obvious reasons. Didn't want that, but.
Because of the slagging, or because you thought it was more than just slagging?
Well, I don't, like, fundamentally, like, I wasn't any bigger than any player in that team. I wasn't more important than any player in that team. I genuinely felt that, like, I didn't feel like I was entitled to this more than anyone. I was probably chosen for those things because I was a forward, and social media and different things like that. but I didn't want the players to be looking at, like, and some players probably did kind of not begrudge it, but they were looking at saying, like, why are you doing this? Why are you going out on a solo run? Why are you you're trying to be commercial? Like, and I didn't want it to get it between the group. And there was times when it came up, like anything, social media came up, people post on social media, brand stuff, sponsorship stuff. It was the same stuff that come up when you're trying to have those conversations around how to be better. And I always fought back the cases, like, why wouldn't, like, and I don't think there was more massive pushback in the team, because there was loads to go around as well, as in there was loads of opportunities. There's 6 sponsors of the football, and there's club sponsors and county sponsors and all types of stuff.
Was there ever any concern that it might be in the back of the selectors' heads? Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's very hard to say that it would be or wouldn't be. I'd say it probably was, as in the back of their minds. Whether it was brought into the conversation around picking the team, I doubt it. As in my view, whether it was or wasn't, but I think that Jim, and he said himself, he's no issues with commercial as long as you're producing on the pitch. Knock yourselves out. That was his line, and which is fair enough. Yeah, was it? And I was still doing some when I was wasn't playing as much, because I was in contracts with different brands, stuff like that. But I'd say it definitely came across it. I'd like to think that wasn't the case. I'd like to think that the team was picked on the best ability of the players, albeit there's the unconscious bias we talked about, what might come into things at times, but I'd like to think that was not a variable in it.
What about you, in terms of the pressure that it puts on you? Like,
I didn't think...
Was it just crack?
Yeah, I just enjoyed it. It was kind of probably... I came into it early because Alan was doing endorsements when I came into the team, and I was Alan's brother. I was naturally, here's his brothers. This is a nice story. 2 for 1. In you go. So it's been always part of what I'd known. Yes, it ramped up and it got more serious, and there was more, like, TV and different things, different mediums like that. But it didn't ever throw me. Like, I never felt like I had to play better or score more because I had an endorsement deal, or I was wearing a certain pair of boots, or...
Yeah, because it's the old story about the double-page spread on the morning of the All-Ireland final. It was cursed for years, and then Lark Corwick did one and scored a hat-trick in the All-Ireland final, so it's not really connected in any way.
And we wouldn't read it, I wouldn't see it. Like, genuinely, none of that team, I'd say, would ever read a paper in All-Ireland final. Back in the early days, I remember newspapers been around, DCU, and where we used to, Pat's early years, I remember a couple of newspapers been around the mornings, or hanging around for so long, but that was very quickly stopped.
Yeah.
And you get together so early in the day, and you're trained to kind of keep your mind pure.
Jim's style of play obviously evolved after the Donegal game. What's your recollection of the Donegal game, the before and after? Because with Paul Flynn sitting in that seat saying that it felt like we were saving football that year. And I could just imagine what the excitement was like, because you were all at your peak in one respect. That forward line, that generation of forwards, certainly that first 30 minutes against Donegal was savage.
Yeah, my memory is that we weren't flying, but I know we had big scores from Flinner and Dermo, and we were motoring quite well. We were finding it hard to get into our usual scoring zone, and I was having a tough day. They just were well organised, the team. They just well drilled. Jim, for fairness, he brought that team on a journey over a 4 or 5 year period that he really rallied them to be a great team. I have a lot of pain around that game. I take a lot of it on my shoulders. I missed 2 frees in the second half that I wouldn't normally miss. They were tough frees, but they were ones that I would, in years gone past, I would have scored. And I remember my only recollection is standing under the Cusack, looking into the canal end and over a free and saying, I don't think I'm going to score this. And I'd never ever felt like that. And I think maybe it was after Ryan McHugh got a goal or whatever it was, but the confidence was knocked out of me for whatever reason. I don't know why. And I stepped up to it and kicked it wide or whatever happened to it. And I just didn't feel confident that day. I don't know what it was. As much as Flinner, probably he had a great day, and the different emotions, the different players, but I was never comfortable that day. I don't know why. And I was playing good football throughout the year. But yeah, maybe it was just a setup or just a lack of ball coming in as an inside forward line. Obviously, we'd had it in 2011. We'd met the team and got over the line in a gritty game.
Yeah.
That was dictated the way teams set up for the next 5 years, and eventually, I suppose, Dublin kind of figured out a way of breaking it down. But in 14, I never felt comfortable in the game. That's my overriding when you say look back on it.
And again, it's a defeat that kind of spurs the 5 in a row, because the 5 in a row doesn't happen if you don't lose that. Like, you know, the defensive structure, the way that you started to control games, the basketball influence, all of that comes in. Is that immediately after that? Is it as stark as that? I
think we had to figure out a way. We worked hard on how to break down that mass defence. We worked very hard on that. And that we felt that was, over the next couple of years, that was going to be the solution here. And I felt like we did that well, and we felt that when we come up against that team, we were going to, the possession game was the way to do it, and wait for gaps and go for it. So that was what was worked on heavily, and we just felt if we could we had the scoring prowess to beat any team, and if we could break down that mass defence that a lot of teams were taking on, we'd be hard to stop.
Yeah, because the insistence on this being like a Dublin style of play where we're going to win games in shootouts and we're going to be able to do that forever, that disappears. It didn't matter after that. It was like, we need to become a winning machine. That's the way to win games.
Yeah.
Were they hard conversations to have? Or was it just obvious?
It was obvious that had to be done. Like, it took the joy out of the game a bit. Like, the northern style football for an inside forward like me, it definitely wasn't as enjoyable a game. Like, I had some great games where I played well and didn't, but against the likes of Cork and Meath over the years, where you're marking your man and playing full forward, you're one-on-one, and the ball's been kicked, gets kick. Yes, some balls spray wide, some balls get lost in the play, but it's just up and down. I love that style of football. Whereas now, as I said, it's into possession, it's calm control. It's not to say it's not, you don't kick the ball fast, but that's, yeah, as those years went on, the inside forward line had to adapt.
Less crack,
absolutely less crack, yeah. But you look at what a Mannion can do now when he's on song. He gets about, he works hard, he's on the full back line making blocks and saves, and he's up the other end getting on the end of stuff to get scores. So but you have to have a serious engine to do that and to be effective. So the game has just evolved, like any sport, any game. It evolves through analytics and through stats, and understanding that you have the ball more times than the other, you win more kickouts, you have better opportunity to win the game, and that's what it comes down to.
And somebody zigging when somebody else zags.
Absolutely.
That's and you know, it definitely happened loads through it. So we're talking with Bernard Brogan. The book is called The Hill. It's in all the bookshops right now. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back speaking with Bernard's brother Alan.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.